Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. Stroking his stubbly chin, the supreme commander of the Queen's armies did not know what to think. Staring at the bruised and battered sellsword, Tyrion's friend, though the relationship between them was difficult to discern, he found it easy to disbelief. The North remembers. You're saying this came from a companion of Sandor Clegane. Isn't that what I fucking told you? Bronn huffed, though the slight movement caused his bruised ribs to ache. I shouldn't be out of fucking bed after what I went through for your fucking cause. But that's what I heard. Nodding, Hema wouldn't keep one of the few remaining allies of his sister's crown in agony any longer. His father might have, while Cersei definitely would have. Though, go get your rest, Bronn. We'll need it. A soft snort. Stannis marching towards us. The Dragon Queen back in action with her beasts. We're all fucking doomed. The halls were open, but who cared? We're all dead anyway. Be by Stannis, Cersei, or Dragonfire. I'm at least gonna be well rested when I die. Gingerly, Bronn hobbled back into his guest quarters in the holdfast, door shutting behind him and in Jaime's face. The North remembers. The North remembers. While groomed to live in the Westerlands and bring glory to House Lannister, Jaime had been quite worldly in his travels as a Kingsguard. Picking up the customs of all the Seven Kingdoms, that particular phrase was one often said in the North. Had it been winter is coming, and it points to the Starks, but that phrase could be any house. House Lannister had so many enemies converging on it that one phrase by one little girl and a scarred reprobate didn't seem to matter in the scheme of things. But Jaime headed deeper into the holdfast anyway. It merited discussion with Cersei at the very least. Outside, the flickers of lights in the curfewed city were matched by the thousands of campfires cooking outside the walls. The tens of thousands of Stannis' army surrounding King's Landing, hemming them in like rats, this time coming from land rather than the sea. It made Jaime shake his head. Had he bet on anyone in the War of the Five Kings, he'd have bet on Robb Stark. Not that your judgment has proven to be worth a damn. As for Cersei's whereabouts, just as he was about to scramble up the steps towards the royal quarters, he spotted Serek Gregor waiting outside the entrance to the map chambers. He tried to move through, but Gregor refused to move. Excuse me, Clegane, the Mountain said nothing. Are you denying the commander of Her Grace's army's entry? Without a word said Clegane. Finally lumbered out of the way. The chambers were open to the air, moonlight adding to the torches mounted on the wall to illuminate the massive map of Westeros, painted on the floor. Boots clicking against the stone, Jaime found Cersei rather easily. Her black dress reflected the orange-red light in a lustrous sheen. Sere, he called out. No, it's mine. Jaime heard her mutter, pacing back and forth across the center of the continent. Their castles will burn, and I'll find loyal lords. Cersei, voice firmer and louder, Jaime managed to snap the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, more accurately, the Queen of King's Landing, out of her funk. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be asleep? As her paramour as well as her brother and commander, he took advantage and strode to her, arm around her waist and hand pressing against her swollen belly. Think of the babe. She leaned into his touch, but wrenched away. I can't afford to rest. Running her hands along her sides, Cersei walked along the length of the Crownlands towards their own home. Probably the last place any of their brood was ever happy. There are enemies everywhere, brother, out there, watching us. They're even in here. Byrne finds them and silences them. But there are always more. Paranoid. Manic. It was almost the same as his past. Then he refused to do anything out of duty. Now he could suppose it was a more selfish motive. We have the Iron Throne, and the city defenses. Stannis tried and failed, before and won't succeed a second time. Nodding, a tiny smile stretched over her face. No, he will not succeed. I'll see to it. Before Jaime could inquire what she meant, Cersei changed the subject. Why are you here? I did not send for you. Sarah Bronn returned. Who? Cersei's brow nodded before finding recognition. Ah yes, our little brother's pet, Sellsword. I thought I told him to raid Stannis' forces. She shook her head. If he can't complete that. He ran into the Hound. Jaime interrupted. She scoffed. So, there was a girl with him who asked Bronn to deliver you a message. You specifically, and I thought you should know. Cersei clearly found it addled, but humored him, and was partially curious. Well, out with it. The North remembers, that was the message, Jaime told her. Cersei stiffened. In a quick motion, she turned from Jaime. What? Are you sure? Certainly. Bronn couldn't wait to tell me. He refused milk of the poppy so he'd be awake to see me. The North remembers, Cersei whispered, lingering on the words. What do you think it means? Who told Bronn this? Some angry girl, he said, and Sandor Clegane was there. Chuckling, the queen rolled her eyes. I honestly forgot about him, Cersei said, turning back to him. Nearby, Gregor put his hand on his sword. What could he possibly want? That's all Bronn told me. Who's the girl? A young one. He didn't recognize her. A northern girl. An angry one at that, supposedly, Jaime said. He watched his sister's face closely, her mind clearly running overtime. Sansa. No, can't be, Cersei replied, shaking her head. She wouldn't leave Winterfell, especially not to come here. Her features formed into a dark scowl, the same she used when thinking of Marguerite Tyrell before the latter's death. Besides, I doubt anyone would refer to her as a young girl. She was always a pretty thing. The last came out as a hiss. Until there comes another, younger and more beautiful, to cast you down and take all that you hold dear. Sansa, Marguerite, Daenerys, all those who could fit into the characterization of the old witch. Jaime had no way of knowing this, for Cersei never told him. He believed it was jealousy and moved on. There were 2 Stark girls. What was the other one's name? Ira, I believe. I don't remember her well, save her existence and the fact she looked like a boy. Cersei snickered at how that must have driven Captain Stark mad. Last I heard from Q-Bird, she'd returned to Winterfell. Well, it must be her, Jaime said, moving to the side, walking towards Winterfell, on the floor. She has some ability, fighting. I mean, I've not seen Bronn more scared, though mayhaps it was the Hound nearly breaking every bone in his body. People always revert to their lowest and weakest tendencies when death hangs over them. People always shit themselves when they die, Jaime remarked. Cersei acted as if she'd tuned him out for a moment, and only caught the tail end of his sentence. Scowling, what was that? Oh, nothing. Stepping towards Winterfell herself, with a clunk she smashed her boot into the painted marker, symbolically destroying the home of her greatest banes as she did with Highgarden. It won't matter, let that bitch and her dog come. Let the Har Sansa plot in her frozen wasteland and our monster brother plot from the dragon whore's lair. Cersei threw her head back in cackling laughter. They'll all choke on their tongues after they see Stannis and his army become a pile of ashes in the wind. A foreboding shuddered through Jaime. Cerys. You know, she looked at him, eyes sparkling with zeal and mirth. The wildfire is still here, sweet brother, Cersei smirked. What? Aime's voice came out as a whisper. Cersei, what are you planning? He wasn't in King's Landing when Cersei raised the Great Septon. She didn't even explicitly tell him what happened. He'd heard exactly what, though. Whenever he thought about it, he found it difficult to look her in the eyes. The smell was one he'd never forget in his life, and only 2 had ever burned it into his memory. Without delay, Cersei strode to him, taking his hands in hers. God's help him, he still enjoyed the feel of her soft skin on his. Once he found it, his soul-driving purpose. There's a trap for Stannis, a trap to rid the world of the disgusting stags that sullied this realm as Robert did me. Now, Jaime realized her allure as a curse, a sick jay played on him by the gods, slowly turning the woman he loved into the Mad King. That is madness. While any other would have sent her into a murderous rage at that comment, Cersei merely gave him a patronizing smile, as their father or mother may have done when he said something naughty or wrong-headed. It is brilliant. The one good thing that little monster ever did right in his life. My only regret is that he didn't roast Stannis alive as he did the rest of those ships, she hissed. I will not make the same mistake. Her hand ghosted over her belly, the other taking Gaime's and bringing it to her visible swell. She always did know how to manipulate me. House Lannister will have the realm, even if it rules over a pile of ashes. What use is power if we lose ourselves to obtain it? He murmured quietly. A question he and Tyrion discussed at length, long ago. She cocked her head at him. Wasn't it you who told me fuck everyone who isn't us? A gentle chuckle. Cersei wrapped her arms around his shoulders, looping around his neck. You were right then, Shaime. We're the only ones who matter. Everything they've taken from us, we're going to take back and more. Dragon, direwolf, stagging, they'll all burn before us. The field of fire, only this time, the lion shall breathe the fire. The things I do for love, everything to save Cersei and their children. Only for their children to all die and Cersei to transform slowly into Aerys Targaryen, before his very eyes. Cruelty in the extreme, but for what he personally inflicted on so many perhaps, it was well deserved. Allowing Cersei to lead him to bed in that moment, her mania and bloodlust engulfing her in desire. Perhaps it wasn't the atrocities that doomed him to this. Perhaps it was simply who he was, sinful and weak. So the city is fully surrounded? Aye, your grace, Randyll Tarly proclaimed, standing with his son and Lord Roland Caron of the Stormlanders. The Westerlands are drained of manpower, and with Daenerys Targaryen currently in Dorne, I'm confident she won't turn the assault into a three-way conflict. Davos watched Stannis scowl. You can't be sure of it. He was currently glowering over the defeat of Lord Baelor, and the loss of so many good men, both to Dragonfire and whatever extortion that the Dragon Queen had used to ensure the neutrality of the High Towers and their Honeywine Valley allies. A dragon is never sated. She tasted blood and could want plenty more to whet her thirst. I can spare 10,000 of my men to screen against the Dothraki, and Unsullied in Rusby and Stokeworth. Lord Roland, a legitimized bastard much like Jon had been, offered. There's good ground on a steep southern bank of a creek, enough pikemen and archers and they could cut down cavalry for eons. Deep in thought, Stannis finally waved it off. We assault the walls, sooner than later. See it done, Tarly. Bowing, the Lord of Hornhill departed with the others in tow, leaving the remnants of the Baratheon War Council in the room alone, not even any guards. It begins, your grace, Pater Baelish remarked from beside the king. Aye, it does, he snorted. Twice I've been here. Once by sea, and now by land, and no Tywin Lannister is here to save Cersei from the fires of her own making. Stannis rubbed his leg. She should have killed herself with her incest bastard when she had the chance. Have you known Cersei Lannister to not cling to delusions and false hope? Littlefinger smiled softly when the king shook his head. Get through the walls and I guarantee that even the Westermen will bend the knee to you. They don't deserve to get off so easily. I will make sure they face the justice of the rightful king before I entertain any idea of a pardon. For too long this realm has dealt with traitors and craven backstabbers, sacrificing honor and justice for the barest of personal gain. I'm fucking sick of it. The words of his king, unsettling him. Davos hated the current arrangement, wishing for the council of old, simply himself, Stannis, Jon, even Melisandre. She fanned Stannis' ego, but she grounded him in a way. Without her, only the breadth of imagination restrained Stannis' estimation of his fate. As such, Davos held a heavy burden to hem in the excesses. Your grace, last time the threat was from land, but this time there is a threat from the sea. Glancing at the map, studying the various markers, and committing them to memory, Stannis chewed at his lip, brow wrinkling in deep thought. The Ironborn. Below the table, he stroked his bad leg. The ulcerations managed to heal for now, but it still ached. What of that pirate? Does Cersei still have his loyalty? Honestly, Stannis wondered why Euron Greyjoy still stood behind the woman that was reduced to control one geographic point, hemmed in by walls. Ironborn scatter like jackals, coward and craven. His ships still anchor in the harbor, your grace, Baelish said, adding new markers to the map. Curved wood carved into crude ship figurines, now filling Blackwater Bay. Garrisoning the bay, probably screening against invasion by Daenerys Targaryen. I doubt that, Davos mused. She's already focused on land, given how Rosby and Stokeworth declared for her. Dragons are in Dorne, so I think they're worried we'll try by sea again. No. Stannis shook his head, lightly banging his fist against the table. I'm not making that mistake again, not damn again. Not defeating Tywin before assaulting the city, exposing his men to destruction from the wildfire. I am far closer to sitting upon the throne, that is mine by right, and by fate, and I will not toss it upon the rocks. Having seen his king in the greatest of stresses before, it still disquieted Davis seeing how cracks were beginning to form on Stannis' soul. The closer he comes to his goal, the more it flays at him. Only 3 had truly grounded him. Davos himself, out of his depth swimming alone against the tide, while Shireen and the king were fraying in their own way, leaving only, "Your Grace, even if we defeat Cersei, then there's still Daenerys Targaryen to defeat." "My whispers indicate Jon Stark almost killed one of her dragons," Baelish said, "and that the High Towers nearly killed her in Dorne. We can defeat her if we are smart. Why should our king risk the destruction of our armies?" Stannis scowling, Davos inhaled, and leaned forward. "You Grace, I've seen the dragons, they are not to trifle with. Please at least consider an accord with Daenerys Targaryen. Offer her Dragonstone and her holdings in Essos in exchange for an alliance." "Careful, Davos." Stannis only precluded treason charges because he knew Davos to be loyal. "One cannot trust that house. Your grandmother and her grandfather were sister and brother, making you kin," he had to try, for Jon. "Your father and her father were the closest of friends. This enmity doesn't have to last." Pursing his lips, Stannis leaned back. "You were there, Lord Davos. You met her, saw her counsel. What is your opinion?" Of this Davos had to think. He wished not to try Stannis' patience. To push his luck, he may have had leeway with Stannis, but it wasn't long ago that the Stag King threw him in a cell for speaking out against something dear to him. "Tread carefully. She is fierce like stone except when angry. Then it feels like the room is melting." With this he could say it honestly. She is also very sentimental, cares about those around her, and about the small folk. So her attacking King's Landing, while we do, isn't likely. I feel she wouldn't want to expose the small folk to the casualties of a sack. She refused to storm Yunkai and Meereen in Slaver's Bay for the same reasons. Stannis seemed to mumble something, to which Davos swore included the word weakness. He waited till the king's eyes met his before continuing. "There's a struggle within her, I believe. Whether to rain fire and blood or go about things more diplomatically. We know what she will choose," Littlefinger mused dryly. "I'm not so sure." "How can you make that assessment?" "Because she didn't kill Baelor Hightower." While it did surprise Littlefinger, what truly pissed him off about it was the inability to use his death to further secure the reach behind Stannis. For now at least. "No, because she refused to harm Jon Stark." Stannis grunted. "Jon is dead. She had him killed," he growled. To this Davos responded quickly. "That is not at all the case. I saw him with my own eyes. Heard him with my own ears. Lest you think me a liar, Jon Stark is not dead." A flash of pain and an almost fatherly affection flickered in Stannis' eyes. "Jon Stark? He is alive?" "Impossible," Littlefinger dismissed. "You can't raise the dead. Lady Melisandre can, and did." Davos replied, "Believe me, I've seen her conjure wonders that others dismiss as nightmares, and this, by the gods, she actually did it. Jon returned to us." Stannis closed his eyes, trying to keep his emotions in check. What happened to him? He remained under the care of Daenerys Targaryen. There was no chance for her to release him. "I'm sorry." "Yes. Unfortunate he must continue in the cells of Dragonstone. From what I saw, he didn't suffer there. Your Grace." Davos knew the perfidy of those cells, only Shireen's friendship keeping him sane during those months. Jon was afforded a guest chambers under guard. Space so he could recover. Pinching the brow of his nose, the newest confidant of the Stag King leaned forward to whisper in his ear. "Your Grace, this Jon Stark has betrayed you," Littlefinger pointed out.
"Actually, Jon never bent the knee," Davos said.
"Never," Stannis gasped quietly. "Never," Davos replied, shaking his head. "Even under that immense pressure, it was my understanding that he endured quite a lot in their dungeons. Abuse of many kinds." Stannis smirked. What a man. There was a reason he had hoped for Jon to marry Shireen and be essentially his co-heir. Standing up for his kingdom and his house. Yet, the Dragon Queen had to have ordered him to be brought back to life. Correct. Tef said, at Davos' slight nod, he continued. She must have had a reason, a good one too. Jon Stark was her enemy, master of war to the one person who stands between her and the throne. Yes. Well, Davos cleared his throat. It seemed to me she had a certain affection for Jon. Crossing his arms, Littlefinger smiled. He looked so serene, gentle, but Davos saw the snake within. There's the truth of it. You mean she and Jon? Stannis seemed to be taken aback. A whore she is, but Jon is as his father, honorable. Yet Ned fathered him. Cecilise had said so much before she was taken from him. Could she have been right? Perhaps, your grace, I know not for sure, Davos said, raising his hands. Jon was killed by one of her own. Perhaps she felt it was the right thing to do. He died under her care, after all. Still, it's a tale as old as time. Many a strong, steadfast man has found himself destroyed and co-opted by a seductress into a broken shell of what he once was, serving only her whims and desires. Littlefinger looked at Stannis. I assure you, your grace, not every man can claim to hold the inner steel of Rhaenyra's chosen. Had it been you, I doubt you would have acted the same. But Jon is but a man. Davos frowned. If the Lord of Light did bring him back, then he has the favor of the divine as well. There's a reason he fights alongside you, your grace. The stag rubbed over his face. Aye, he was destined to fight at my side during the long night. But the question is not regarding him but the dragon whore. He sighed deeply. Bringing back one of my enemy's most trusted advisors and commanders. Would I do the same? No, even if it happened under guest rights. He half laughed, looking at each of them in the face. 7 hells, I wouldn't have even taken him prisoner if he refused to bend the knee. Watching his king intently, Davos listened to every word. While he was not surprised at what Stannis said, he searched desperately for the person he once knew. Shireen lingered heavily in his mind, by every passing second. He believed what she had told him, yet it didn't seem possible for Stannis to truly act or feel that way towards her. He wanted to find the truth of it. Whatever the reason is, she did have the Red Woman bring him back. I saw it with my own eyes, your grace. It was rather something. Yes, I imagine so, Stannis said, leaning forward a bit. How'd she do it? She said some words in her foreign language. I didn't understand them, yet I understood it was some sort of sacred ritual. The same words, over and over again. She cleaned Jon's wounds, then clipped some of his hair, recanted the special words, and laid her hands on him. Davos said, then outstretched his hands over the air in front of him, to demonstrate. Stannis's eyes widened as he listened. Then that was it. She finished whatever she had to say, and Jon didn't come back. What? Stannis gasped. Well, it had a delayed effect, or so I think, Davos added. We all left the room, but only a few moments we heard quite the racket back inside the room. We rushed back into the room to see Jon gasping for air, like he'd just been reborn. Stannis sat back, meditating on what he'd heard. Littlefinger cut in. Well, that seems rather impossible. He was stabbed? Yes, a few times, I believe. The Stag King rose back up with some intense energy. If the Lord bestowed Lady Melisandre with that kind of power, imagine what he might give to me, he said, glancing at his hands as he held them up. Especially once I take the throne, no one will be able to stop the Lord's chosen. I'll be the greatest king this land has ever since. Far better than Robert or anyone that came before, because I'll not only have the greatest army, but also the Red God at my back. Saradre. From his bellowed command, the bastard knight entered from his watch outside the chamber. Yes, your grace, he asked, his uncle. Tell the men to assemble all Lannister prisoners in the dungeons. 7 hells, whatever Dothraki and Unsullied we still have. Tie them to staves and burn them. Davos blinked. Your grace, is this necessary? Stroking his chin, Stannis nodded. Our army shall face the greatest of challenges. To strip the city of my ancestor, Egan the Conqueror, from my whore of a good sister. They will need the beneficence of ritual to overcome the defenses. He chuckled dryly. Perhaps he'll give me powers beyond comprehension. The question is that of when, not if he grants you them, your grace. Littlefinger replied, oily as ever. Nodding, Stannis looked back at his nephew. Well, nephew, get it done. The knight stood there, still slightly shocked at the request. Davos could only assume the various things that were going through his head. Now, that jolted him from his torpor. At once, your grace, he scrambled out. Lips tight, Davos looked at his king. He'd seen the Red Witch perform a lot of rituals, some of them sacrilegious and even close to atrocity, but this, even in contrast to what she had done and planned to do to poor Gendry Waters, it was beyond the pale. Your grace, while I defer to you on issues of battle, this could cost us. I don't follow. The might of the Lord of Light will provide the strength to win the coming battle. I do not doubt that, but considering the choice facing the lords of the Westerlands, they may be more amenable to surrender if you show mercy now." "Mercy? Mercy?" Stannis laughed. "I'll not show mercy, especially to those who don't recognize me as the true king of the Seven Kingdoms. They will meet a fate fit to the crime." "What crime?" "Treason. It's all treason." "What of the women and children, your grace?" Stannis shrugged slightly. "Fate fit for the crime." Devise hadn't even heard Stannis spout such words before. He certainly didn't choose the stakes because of his lust for power, but rather his sense of justice, loyalty, and courageousness. Now he only saw a man consumed by the fate he envisioned for himself, one that valued not loyalty, but obedience, dangerous to anyone who'd think twice about bending the knee. He wasn't sure that Stannis knew what the word mercy even meant anymore. And yet, he was still Stannis Baratheon. The King Davos swore an oath to serve and follow into the heat of battle. The king his 3 eldest sons died for. That just man still exists. I cannot let him down or fall to his demons. Both exiting the chambers, leaving Stannis to his called for solitude, Davos eyed Littlefinger with suspicion. "Lord Baelish, follow me." Littlefinger raised his eyebrow. "Yes, Lord Davos. Do you wish to speak with me?" The two of them walked along the halls, which were narrow and winding, the low light of the early winter dusk casting it in dark shadows, only banished by torchlight. "I suppose you still disapprove of His Grace's decision on the prisoners." "His Grace has amassed the reversal of his defeat upon the city walls, not through brutality, but through honor and justice," replied the Onion Knight. He coached his words carefully, but even he wasn't aware of the type of snake he dealt with. "I understand his desire to punish those that broke their oaths, but please, Lord Baelish, I need your help to avoid unnecessary death. Too many have died already, and we will need them to fight the demons." "Demons?" Littlefinger chuckled. "Too many children's stories, if you ask me. Lord Stark and the Princess Shireen, perhaps, could believe it, but we are grown men with many decades of experience." Davos's teeth gritted at the mention of the dear princess. "Another thing, have you badmouthed the Princess Shireen to His Grace?"
Badmouth? Of course not.
"But given the nature of Cersei Lannister's perfidy, it has been my responsibility to keep His Grace on the right mindset, and unfortunately it has led him to also apportion a hefty responsibility to the death of Queen Silius, to the Princess." Snapping, the Onion Knight grabbed Littlefinger by his gambeson and slammed him against the wall. Even his severed fingers could grip him in his anger. "I don't care what your little plots are. Baelish, do not threaten the princess, or I will kill you." Trembling, he let Littlefinger collapse on the ground, walking away. Hoping against all hope that he wasn't too late in saving the king he served and the princess he cared for. They managed to withdraw from the plane of existence their minds spent most of their time in, right before she entered. Eyes resuming their normal blank gray pallor, just as the telltale click of feminine boots echoed from the wooden floor. "Bran?" Sansa asked, seeing them by the fire. There was no reason for it, but somehow seeking out warmth made them look more human. "You didn't come to supper." A human would have groaned at the chiding, but they were beyond that. "I asked for the servants to bring my nourishment here. There was no need to eat except to keep the body alive." She bit her lip, worried. "Brother, the servants didn't like to come here," saying he unsettled them. Somehow Sansa could feel it too, but this was her brother. "I can't lose anyone else. You need to eat, Bran. I know things are troubling with Jon gone, and Arya disappeared. But why have you come?" Bran asked her. They didn't want her here any longer than needed. She impeded them. They had things to do. "Just state your request or question." They didn't care much for Sansa. She cared for Bran, thinking he still existed. "Bran," she said, reaching to lay her hand on their knee, which of course had little effect on them. "Can you tell me where Arya is?" Well, they could, but telling Sansa where her sister was only complicated things. They knew she was going to King's Landing. They'd seen her skirmish with some Lannister bannermen. "I have a feeling she's gone to King's Landing. If that's true, I need to get a Revan to Stannis to look out for her. She won't be safe during the battle. Our vision doesn't allow us to everywhere at once. Only that if we are there, we see, we don't forget either." She exhaled. "I'm confused." "This may always confuse you," Bran told her. "Our ravens are in places we command them. Events conspiring in those places are what we see." "Do you have ravens in King's Landing?" "No," they answered. "A lie. Most of their ravens were, in fact, in King's Landing. They thought their dead expression would carry the lie. It normally did, but for some reason, Sansa didn't seem overly convinced. I just want to know if she's okay. We have no idea whether or not she is. I'd like you to find out. It's not as easy as you think. Sansa pursed her lips and withdrew her hand. Find her. Bran slid to the side, internally aghast at the gall of her. To think she was in any way in command of them. It angered them. They also didn't think she planned to back down. Her hanging over their every move was the last thing they needed. They had things to do and things to see. They surmised anything would satisfy her. Anything to get her to leave. Wordlessly, their eyes rolled back, going into the ravens. It was all for show, of course. They already knew where Era was, but Sansa had to see they had gone somewhere. The Riverlands. What? Are you sure? She's camping with a man with a massive burn scar across his face, they said, mixing truth with a lie. Sansa was completely shocked. Sandor Clennion. Yes, could be. What were they talking about? We don't know. You just wanted us to find her, not listen. Sansa clenched her teeth, willing herself to keep her patience. After Jon's death, everything seemed to be collapsing. The food that Daenerys Targaryen had sent was close to being eaten up, and she would rather slit her throat than write for more. Littlefinger was writing more and more to her, and Sansa couldn't help but shudder as she read his affectionate words. Baelish, he seemed to be a useful ally in Stannis' camp, but there was just something about him. She'd never trust the man who sold her to the Boltons. Jon, why did you have to die? Perhaps it was fitting. Sansa had treated him horridly, and now when she truly needed him, the gods took him away. I'll have to handle things myself, then. What is Stannis doing? Marching on King's Landing, they replied. Blinking, Sansa was only moderately surprised. Took him long enough. You've been here far too long, Sansa Stark. They lassoed their mind around the guard standing outside the door, something they'd done some 100 times by now, even easier, with the same person. They made sure this guard attended to them every day, every night or so. If they had the strength, they'd ward into him. The only one they'd ever been able to successfully ward repeatedly was Hodor, but he died some time ago. If they wanted to achieve what they needed, warding people would need to be second nature to them. This guardsman's mind was already a second skin to him, making him enter the room easily, but forgot to make him knock. Sansa was aghast. What are you doing? She asked, snapping at the guard. Warging into someone's mind was hard enough. Making them move proved difficult. Yet getting words to come out of their mouth was the hardest. It took many nights of practice. Eventually, they could make a person sound somewhat human. The guard trembled, knowing he made a mistake. They understood this as the person's consciousness not being entirely buried. Bran had full control, but occasionally the person's mind might fight back a bit, as if trying to alert someone else what was happening. Thankfully, no one had been able to fully wrestle control from them. Still, they weren't sure whether or not the guard was conscious of what Bran made him do. He hadn't blabbed about the strangling foxes or stabbing squirrels yet, so that was probably a good sign. My lady, he finally ground out. It sounded completely forced and halting, but they hoped it would be seen as mere apprehension at interrupting. Sansa raised an eyebrow at the strange guard, but that was all. Just eat something, Bran. I don't want you to starve. Walking towards the door, she peered back at him. If there's anything new on Arya, please send for me. We will, they answered with the most warmth they could muster, not bloody much, but it disarmed her enough to smile as she left. Mind a jumble of confusing and convoluted thoughts, Sansa didn't pay attention as she turned the corner, smacking into someone's chest and nearly collapsing. Only 2 strong arms managed to keep her upright. Forgive me, my lady. Her eyes focused and was met with the apologetic face of Podrick Payne. I should strive to watch where I'm going more closely. Sansa fought a tiny blush. No, Podrick. It's fine. I was the one not paying attention. There was a slight hesitation for both of them, neither moving from what was now a rather intimate position. Sansa broke it first, though she felt a bit cold once his hands were no longer clutching her waist and shoulders. Podrick, mind escorting me to my solar? He bowed. The honor is mine, my lady. Thankfully, Jon had plenty of time to gather his thoughts on the King's Road. His recollection of Stannis Baratheon was meager. The sharpness of those memories was especially dull. He knew they had met at Castle Black. Stannis' proposal to become a Stark had been too good to refuse, or so he guessed, given that event was lost to him as well. What he knew of Stannis was only what he'd heard, and what he'd been told. As such, rumors, the problem with rumors is, they never seem actually real. Once words were passed around so much they lost meaning and context, things got mixed up and lost. Well, he did remember a few things. He recalled much of the journey to Hardhome, Stannis and he courting the wildlings, the damn icy beasts that attacked them, those blue eyes. Jon's dreams were still filled with those same eyes. He felt like Stannis had been brave, right up until he saw the Night King bring bodies back to life. But that in essence spoke to his character. Showing cracks in his countenance, revealing fear, some might consider that brave in its own right, especially for his own men to see it. For men who aren't afraid are truly mad. Though even if Jon had his full memory, he wouldn't have seen Stannis in months. Several months. During that time, Stannis had gotten up to all sorts of things. Taken Highgarden, burned Olenna Tyrell at the stake. Jon had no idea what to think about that. Of course he knew that was Stannis' way of doing things. Yet for that poor old lady, harsh. For no reason, she could harm no one without her castle and her army. A monstrous deed. Stannis committed it, yet so did Dany. Was there any difference? Was there a glaring one? Only meeting Stannis could clear the storm in his mind, eliminate the confusion. Part of Jon knew the truth, knew which was the proper choice of destiny, but such was too small, too faint, swallowed by the black abyss that engulfed him. A fluttering filled his ears, joined by some sort of muffled screaming that puzzled Jon. Tilting his head, a sudden black cloud shot above him, and startling the horse. A flock of ravens, the massive flock, likely 1,000 strong, swarmed towards, then skirting around the city, seeming to be both drawn by it and avoiding it, at the same time. Odd? Spurring his horse on, suddenly Jon's hands jerked to cover his face, as the light of a second sun erupted in the distance. Moments later, the blinding light was joined by a massive shockwave that bracketed him as would a blow from a stampeding mammoth. Clutching the reins tightly and bending forwards, in spite of the massive strain on his back, Jon just managed to hold his position. But the horse wasn't following his lead. Staggered by the blast, it reared on its hind legs, neighing in terror and throwing Jon off its back. He hit the ground with a thud, rolling away from the now running horse, while coughs and wheezes left his mouth. Fucking hells. 7 fucking hells. Retching out his lungs, Jon hesitantly pushed himself to his knees, slowly rising as he set his gaze upon King's Landing. Where had been the greatest city of the realm was now being enveloped by a massive cloud of greasy black smoke rising in an almost toadstool shape, green flames licking at the base. Jon stared at the sheer magnitude of destruction in a dark wonder. By the old gods and the new, one foot staggering in front of the other, the second Lord of Winterfell in 2 decades made his trek towards a ruined and broken city. Only the gods knew what Jon would find there. One couldn't imagine something like this. Arya couldn't, even from the number of situations where she had been afraid for her life. Among herself or a small group was one thing, but in a city of hundreds of thousands jammed together, the tension could be cut with a knife. Small folk wandered around like wights, in a daze. Children sat listlessly on stoops or porches without a sign of vibrancy, and the noise, there was quite little of it, and it truly unsettled her. Fuck. Sandor, his hood pulled up over his head, looked around with a sneer. Pathetic. Even the damn first siege wasn't this bad. Arya didn't respond. Having heard from Sansa the harrowing tales of the riots and starvation while Stannis first attacked, she wasn't keen on bringing up her sister right now. Not while she was focused on one thing and one thing alone. Siege or no siege, Cersei dies. Her voice was low though. Ears were still everywhere, attached to hungry mouths that would sell out anyone for an extra morsel of bread. Tilting his head down, Sandor watched her closely from beneath his cowl, trying hard not to expose the axe hidden under the cloak. Arya had it easier, only carrying needle and a dagger. What'ya think you'll do when you see her? They turned a corner, moving towards the base of Egwon's high hill. I'll kill her. There was nothing to elaborate. We'll see, Sandor snorted. You don't have the mettle to kill a pregnant woman. I'm capable of a great many things. If the Hound didn't know that already, then Arya couldn't help him. Perhaps you are, but as I said, your life should be worth more than fucking vengeance. Arya did not want to discuss this, so changed the subject. And what do you want out of this?
I just want my brother.
Why? Just because he stuck your face in a fire. Sandor snarled. Fucking yes, because stuck my face in a fire. He scarred me for life. He needs to pay for that. Arya quieted down for a few moments before speaking again. Cersei has a lot to pay for too. Justice, not vengeance. Keep telling yourself that. In the scummy neighborhood they were, everyone was too afraid, or too hungry to even pay them to heed. The don't fuck with us glares didn't hurt. Arya shot him one of those, but he didn't care. I'm done. Got no life to live but this. Not the same with you. One place that was still bustling, the forges, belching out swords and spearheads for the newly raised gold cloaks. As they passed it, Arya rolled her eyes. Just shut up and get us there. She felt eyes on the back of her head and stiffened, but shrugged it off. One way or the other, no one would stop her from finishing her list. Peering through the flurry of sparks shooting out of the forge, the young smith blinked, unknowing of what he saw but convinced it was a ghost from his youth. Hand stilling at the forge as he lost himself in thought. Is that her? The hair was longer, but he couldn't be sure. Hey, stupid bull! The master smith bellowed. Less dicking around and finish that fucking sword. Shaking his head, the boy brought down his hammer onto the molten metal with a loud clang. Couldn't be her. You're dreaming. Still. Blade's finished, he called back. I'm gonna grab my rations from the communal kitchen. I'll be back later. Without waiting for a response, he looped his hammer on his shoulder and strode out of the shop, making sure to follow the massive bruiser that stood out in the crowd. Is that you, Aerie? Unfortunately for the young man, for the two killers, 7 hells, for all of King's Landing, the sound of horn blows pierced the din. It started weakly, faintly, as if dozens of miles away, but it steadily grew louder, a sound straight from the deepest of all the hells booming across the landscape. A tactic Stannis had borrowed from the Boltons. As such, it took a collective moment before someone within the city, a nameless archetype of the average denizen of King's Landing's slums, took up the hue and cry. Stannis attacks. The reaction wasn't that of the dragons returning, but pretty close. All remembered how Stannis tried before to rape and plunder the city they called home. Now, he was back to finish the job, and everyone knew it. In an instant, what was a quiet, listless city roared to life. Empty streets soon became a throng of tens of thousands of desperate people, fleeing to God's nowhere. Some raced for the Red Keep, some booked for the Dragon Pit. Most just ran without any plan at all, except to escape the vengeful horde that would overwhelm and slaughter them all. Men, women, children, aged, infirm. They all ran, and thousands of them were trampled underfoot in the ensuing chaos. Fists lashing out, Sandor added to it by bashing the skulls of anyone who got in his way. Fuck Stannis in the ass. This was not going well at all. Unperturbed, Arya crashed her shoulders into the doorway of a house. Shoddily built, the door collapsed. Follow me. The sneaking towards the beach now became a mad dash. For 3, not 2. 5 years. Seated upon his simple camp chair out of archery range, King Stannis Baratheon looked over the Gate of the Gods and the wall that stretched across the grassy plain of the Blackwater Rush. 5 years, my lords. 60 moons. 1800 days since I last bore witness to this wretched city. Since the stag lost to the lion before its very walls, none of the generals or courtiers, nor the king's very own daughter, brought to bear witness to what was to come, said a single thing. The silence was eerie, given that an entire city of hundreds of thousands dwelled behind the walls, and an army of tens of thousands waited outside them. Even Lord Handevos and Councillor Baelish kept silent. One best not antagonize the Stag King. His lips curled into the most satisfied smile, savoring the sight of it all. Such will never happen again. By the time the sun rises on the morrow, I shall be sitting upon the Iron Throne, the throne of my ancestors. Aegon the Conqueror's blood ran through his veins, and the great dragon rider's destiny existed as one facet of his own. Are the men ready? He barked at Lord Tarley. Randall nodded. They are, your grace. Stannis pursed his lips. Full attack. The death sentence for thousands was passed with but 2 words, and a wave of the Stepton's king's hand. Wordlessly, Randall signaled to the heralds as Littlefinger smirked, and Davos said a silent prayer. Bringing their trumpets to their lips, the heralds belted out their cheery warble, so out of step with the tense air hanging over King's Landing. "Forward!" commanded the Vale Knights. "To the gates!" bellowed the men of the Stormlands. "Advance!" cried the levies of the Reach. From atop the battlements, drums beat a malevolent stucco as archers and swordsmen took their positions at the strip of land, making up the Gate of the Gods. Knock, arranged in one long line of men, each of the archers drew an arrow from their quivers, while the crossbowmen wound back their weapons, levying them at the ready as each took in the advancing forces of the self-styled prince, who was promised. The sight made even the toughest man quiver. The Baratheon lines stretched out over a quarter-mile, tightly concentrated against the particular stretch of wall. Blocks of horsemen and light infantry waited just out of archery range, presenting and demonstrating in spectacular fashion, the brainchild of King Stannis himself, to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. All formations waited for the breach to happen, ready to charge right into the city and secure it before the Lannisters could regroup. Centering the entire assault force were two massive siege towers, built of the best rainwood oak. Wet animal skins and metal sheets were tacked onto the side to block out flaming arrows, lines of men-at-arms waiting behind to climb the monsters as soon as they touched down upon the battlements to the left and right of the gatehouse. Sprinkled to either side of the siege towers were tortoise formations of raised shields, pondering towards the walls. They carried ladders ready to do their part. In the very center of the line was a massive device, placed on wheels and propelled by the men inside. Stannis and his commanders had learned from their attempts to storm the city the last time. A large battering ram over 40 feet long lumbered towards the gate, the wet animal hides protecting the rear, while the front 10 feet sported the nailed steel plating to protect the front of the ram. 100 Stormlander volunteers commandeered the device and the massive pine log contained within. They would batter open the great gate, or die trying. Once they were in turkey shoot range, the Westermen commanders gave the signal. Loose, a sheet of bolts and arrows shot out from the battlements, streaking over open sights, straight for the onrushing Baratheon forces. Simultaneously, the heralds blared out another command out of their trumpets. From this order, the catapults and trebuchets lined up all across the plains, released their payloads of rock, oil, and pitch-soaked projectiles, and shards of scrap steel and bronze balled together. Each side's first strike crashed into each other in near instantaneous torment and slaughter. Waves of arrows bracketed the onrushing Baratheons, bolts punching through shields, or exploiting whatever weak spot or gap was available. Spurts of blood soaked the dead grass and clothes of men alongside them, the grunts and battle cries soon mixing with screams or an even louder silence as lives were extinguished in the blink of an eye. Along the walls, the projectiles crashed into them with an indomitable fury. Large boulders plowed through stone battlements and crushed men underneath them. Fire blanketed dozens, flaming pitch clinging to armor and clothing, as those afflicted flailed about in terror. Shrapnel cut up further dozens, adding to the slaughter and screams blocking out the drums and horn blows that kept the men's spirits up. First to crash against the walls were the various ladder teams of men-at-arms. But they were soon followed by the immense battering ram. It slammed against the thick gates topped by a great 7-pointed star. One with a massive chunk blasted through the stone by one of the trebuchets, targeted directly at Stannis' orders. "Heave!" screamed Lord Roland Caron, the commander of the breakthrough detachment. Teeth gritted, the scores of volunteers within pulled back the mighty log and shoved it forward, a loud thud echoing into the din as it made contact with the gate. "Keith!" Arrows and rocks whacked against the wooden surface, or clanged upon the metal plates of the front. Heave. Aye. Men hauled ladders into place, smacking against the stone battlements as the men-at-arms scrambled up. Most of the vanguard found themselves impaled with large spears or blades, but even the Lannister defenders couldn't stop all of them once the siege towers rolled into place. In the castle at the top, countless crossbowmen engaged in covering fire for the attackers that stormed across the drawbridge. Axes and swords high, they poured onto the battlements to duel with those under the Lion banner. A vicious melee began, one that tipped heavily in the Stag King's favor. Heave! Again the log crashed against the gate, thud interrupted by cracks and splinters forming in the wood. "Keep it up, lads," screamed Lord Roland. exhorting his men. The spoils of the city are through this fucking gate. Keep heaving. Above, battered and under countless fusillades of arrows and bolts from the siege towers, the defenders brought in their final defense to hold the gate. Stoked by roaring fires, the heated cauldrons of oil approached a boil. Drop, bellowed the Lannister commander, his bannermen complying with grappling hooks and wooden staffs to tip the cauldrons over. Spilling the searing liquid, it flowed out through rivulets in the stone battlements to drop atop the battering ram in a continuous shower. It impacted upon the front of the ram with a hiss, followed by screams from the men within, oil seeping through the gaps to wash over them. Skin searing off from the boiling liquid, they dropped from their positions to writhe on the ground. Primal, blood-curdling screams drove terror deep through their comrades. "Back!" shouted Caron. "Back!" Just as the ram began to lurch backward away from the gate, flaming arrows lanced out from the gatehouse and set the oil ablaze. What poor souls within the puddle were immolated along with the entire van of the battering ram. Even through the sunny day, it burned bright into the distance. Cheers from the defenders following its retreat. Such cheers drove the Baratheon men to fury rather than fear. With Lord Caron taking a position at the very front alongside his most vulnerable men, the battering ram lurched forward right at the gate. A loud battle cry emerged from their throats as they crashed into the gate, metal plating shearing and ironwood finally cracking, doors blasting open. "Hurrah! Hurrah!" screamed the forces of the Stag King, waving banners to their cavalry and infantry in the rear to advance. The city was theirs. The city was ripe for the taking. Fingers gripped the stone railing hard enough to go white, blood squeezed out of them. Queen claimant Cersei Lannister's eyes narrowed, peering into the distance towards where her enemies were. The vastness of it gone to Conqueror's city spread out between them, a vastness that should provide more protection than it in reality did. At least on its own. Carden. Her sudden bark startled the Lord Hand, currently juggling the tasks of reading action reports and using his spyglass to track the front lines on his own. "What's the status?" Gulping, the disgraced Maester shifted his feet. "Lord Crakehall has surrendered the main garrison of the Gate of the Gods." "What?" she shrieked. Lord Lefford reported he was preparing a secondary defensive line deeper inside the city, but from what I can find it is safe to presume that they blasted through it. Fists clenching again, a dark look passed over Cersei's eyes. "See to stopping their attack." "Do it." He bowed. "At once, Your Grace." With that, he scurried off, several scrolls tucked under his arms. Much as the old little man irritated Cersei sometimes, he was competent at what he did, and loyal. Besides Cersei, Jaime hadn't torn his eyes from the fighting in the distance. Eyes worn and losing their spark with each passing second. I should be there. Noticing him again, Cersei scoffed. "Hogwash. No, sister. I should be there with my men, fighting alongside them. Since when have they been yours?" "Since I fought with them, bled with them, died with them in the field. We fought Stannis together, battled the Dragon Queen's slave hordes, and Dothraki's savages together. I am their commander." She chuckled arrogantly. "A lion doesn't concern itself with sheep. Jaime, I am not inclined to risk you to death, at the hands of Stannis's goons. Not with your sword arm gone." Walking over to the gilded table resting in the middle of her solar, legs shaped like the rearing lions of their house, Cersei took the decanter of Arbor Gold and poured herself a cup. "Don't worry, brother. I will allow you to be the one to take Stannis's head for me when all is said and done." Trumpets blared, the sound of clashing steel and screaming small folk audible to Jaime, even from as far away as the Gate of the Gods. Memories of a very similar night flashed in his mind. It was almost uncanny, only the names differing. "Cersei, I suggest we prepare to leave." Even Ser Gregor. His eyes flickered to the great beast of a man waiting by the door in his black armor. "Won't be able to hold all of them." Sipping, Cersei's lips curled upward, a gentle laugh falling from her lips, which turned into one that nearly made her stomach double over. "Oh, Jaime." His blood turned to ice. She didn't notice. "We won't have to worry about any of that. I intend to win this war, be it over a pile of corpses or a pile of ashes, it doesn't matter how." Setting down the cup, Cersei walked to him, wrapping her arms around him. "Fuck everyone who isn't us." Remember, without another word, she drew him for a kiss. And God's help Tiamat. He let himself feel lost in it. Suddenly, an eerie green light flashed all around it for miles. When it cast its almost blinding glow upon the solar blast wave, almost toppling him to the ground. Only how the two of them braced against each other, keeping them upright, eyes closed, the intense noises tearing through his ears like a woman's scream. Like the screams of Elia Martell, that echoed so loud that even he heard them from the throne room. Like the screams of Rhaella Targaryen as the Mad King brutalized her, but in his arms, he heard Cersei laugh over the roar. It started. Hame, it's begun. Her green eyes, once the most beautiful shade of green, glinted with the same color as the wildfire set off outside. A shining light, one that in an instant erupted as a second sun right in the middle of the great city of Aegon the Conqueror. Hidden pots of the unique concoction of the Pyromancer's Guild all went up in an instant, and from only 2 of the many caches of them spread across King's Landing. Blinding white in the middle, the green cloud enveloped upwards in the shape of a toadstool before billowing outward. Shockwave racing in front of the smoke and flame to slam into all in its way. The rumble of the earth beneath their feet sent some men to their knees. The shockwaves of the explosion begat complete chaos. Horses went to their hind legs, sending their riders to the dirt. Stannis tried his best to keep his horse stable, but even he took a tumble. Falling flat on his back, everything went black. Unsure how long he was out, Stannis awoke to the sight of Randyll's tired, grizzled face. Calling to him, his ears rang loudly, but eventually he was able to hear. Your Grace, King Stannis. Are you seriously injured? Should we carry you? No, blast it! Just help me to my feet. Stannis scoffed, gritting his teeth, leaning on Randyll to stand back up. His eyes found the fireball that enveloped into the toadstool, eyes blazing. That sick bitch actually did it. I'll roast her for this. Davos, ever the pragmatist, though having faced wildfire before, he trembled at the sight, concentrated on the task at hand. How many did we lose? Who knows, Randyll shrugged, dispassionate. Depends on how many advanced, though most of our reserves and most likely the initial attackers are still on this side of the wall or among the battlements themselves. From how it looked, aside from a cloud of smoke and ash, the walls were only slightly damaged. Should I halt the attack? Grimacing, his legs starting to twinge, Stannis waved Randyll off. Sound the hold and get me back to my tent. I need to salvage victory from this mess. It was in these moments that he truly missed Melisandre. Her certainty and determination carrying him through the tough spots. But he was the Lord's chosen. He needed to wield his might before he could wield Lightbringer into the final battle. Kingsguard carrying their king to the tent, the ashen-faced generals and lords, crowded around a model of the city. Seems to me Cersei destroyed these areas of the city. Randyll drew a circle with his hand. Blackwater Bay showed us that wildfire burns hot, and it burns quick. Davos added from personal experience. Should be clear in an hour or so. We can race for the Red Keep. Full cavalry charge, to take out Cersei before she knows it. The Stannis shook his head. No, too risky if they fortified Madagor's holdfast. We'd need the siege weapons to get in. Attack from the sea, suggested Lord Meadows. Euron Greyjoy is still there, somewhere, mused Davos, not keen on trying that again. We need to stop their fire. The Stepton stroked his beard. Neutralize it somehow. We have our own fire. Perhaps ours would counterbalance, and set off the rest of theirs. Stannis muttered. Then his eyes went wide. Yes, we use our catapults at the city, Lord willing. Firing flaming projectiles, set off all the other wildfire and we can advance. Your Grace, you can't mean. Davos began. But Stannis held his hand up to cut in. He glanced around at all his advisors, all of you out except for my hand. Everyone murmured with a small bow before exiting. When they were gone, Stannis spoke again. I do, sires Davos. The decision has been made. Ready the catapults. He spoke directly to his hand, who stood unmoving at the command. Sires Davos, ready the fucking catapults. Your Grace, there must be a better way. Thousands will die. If there is, I don't give a damn. This is the way, any way I choose. It's not right. Stannis' eyes widened. I don't care what you think about it. It is my command. It will win me the throne. At any cost. Of course. There's no other way to do it. So what if some miserable townsfolk get burned up? It'll be quick. Fewer mouths to feed once I'm king. Davos finally understood. Who are you? I am Stannis Baratheon, the one true king, the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. Stannis boomed, pounding on his chest. I see a way through, so I can sit on the throne. I cannot back down now. I cannot cower. I see. Stannis approached the Onion Knight, his oldest friend. Sir Davos, stay with me. You've always been by my side, through everything. We're so close. We're here, after traveling so far. Just a few more steps. He held his hand out. Are you with me? A few thousand. They stand in your way. Instead of doing the right thing, sparing the innocent, you'd rather leave them to ruin. It is the only way. It's not. But it is, the only path you see because it has the least risk to you. Sir Davos, you're right. I have followed you all these years, wherever you went. So did I, but this way you choose I cannot follow. I refuse. Stannis stiffened. You lack the resolve to do what is necessary. No, I have the strength to choose what's right, instead of what's easy. Chuckling, the Stag King backed up. His eyes scanned over Davos. You should have stayed lost, instead of returning to me. Perhaps I should have, but I thought the man I remembered you still existed.
I see now I was wrong.
He must have died when I wasn't looking. Stannis glided forward and reached out, grabbing Davos' hand of the king, pin off his chest. Get out of my fucking sight, Seaworth. I should kill you. But out of my respect for all the years you served me, I'll spare your life. As you wish, Davos replied plainly. Get out of here, Stannis said. Now. Davos locked eyes with him but said nothing. For a few moments, no one moved. But then the Onion Knight began to speak. I always thought you were the one, Stannis. I felt it in my bones. Perhaps you still are, but you're not the man I once knew. You've changed, not into a better man, but a weaker one, who doesn't care about the means but only the result you want. If needlessly killing thousands wins you the throne, fine. You'll not be any different from previous kings. But that's just it, Stannis. He turned and started to walk away, but before he ducked out of the tent, I thought you were different than the rest. As his feet carried him forward, he heard Stannis bellow, Baelish. Hearing his name, Littlefinger snaked past Davos into the tent, giving him a sly look all the while. Davos, he just feared for the future. Knocked to the ground as the first blast wave rocked the city. Arya would have been loath to admit that a bump to the head from smacking against a brick wall left her knocked out. As such, as she groggily opened her eyes, the large bulk of the Hound came to focus. What? There was a ringing in her ears. One that blocked out other noise. In the distance there was a pervasive green-white glow. Girl. The whistling started to fade away, replaced by a roaring and piercing screams as if resonating in a wave. Arya soon came to the realization that she had woken up into hell. Girl, she shook away her grogginess. Something better said than done. What the fuck is going on? Arya tried to stand, but flashing lights of red-orange sailed overhead towards elsewhere in the city. She stumbled, but was stopped by Sandor's hand. Cersei set off fucking wildfire. He could tell, being one that lived through the Battle of Blackwater Bay, only the Lannisters had that much shit around. Then Stannis is bombarding the city. There's more wildfire where it came from. Ah, fuck. Closing her eyes, she willed herself to composure. Let's go. The streets were chaos. Tens of thousands of people racing towards the eastern side, towards the Red Keep and the Dragon Pit. The only areas thought to afford safety. Smoke and soot were everywhere, many fleeing suffering from grievous burns that made Arya nearly retch. Her legs pumped. Arya darting and weaving between people, struggling to keep up with Sandor who just shoved people aside as he ran. Arya. It was faint, but Arya heard it. A familiar voice that pierced the din and triggered memories of the past that Arya often thought of when needing comfort. She looked behind her, still running. Arya. In the distance, a thatch of black hair and toned musculature appeared to her. She'd know it anywhere. Gendry. Lost in the ghost from her past, he smiled at her. She hardly realized the corner of her mouth upturning. The throngs of people kept yelling and pushing their past, but both of them stood utterly still. Once they laid eyes on each other, neither knew if one of them should speak. Arya was never one for these sorts of things. But Gendry was certainly the only person she ever thought of in that way. Gendry had his own feelings for her. They developed much faster than hers did. As soon as he saw her again, nothing else was more important. He took a step toward her but stopped when he saw a form approach. Arya from behind. Arya didn't notice a hand reaching for her till it grabbed at her shoulder. Immediately she could tell it wasn't Sandor. Oi! Arya turned her head to reveal a gold cloak, face unshaven and teeth rotten, leering at her. You're a pretty thing. Fuck off! She hissed, but his grip was too tight. Clicking his tongue, the glorified thug lifted her up and threw her over his shoulder. Let's go, mates, he called to his comrades. A cluster of about 9 other gold cloaks. If we gonna burn, let's have some fucking fun first. From how many pairs of eyes undressed her rather pruriently, Arya was under no compunctions of what they would do. Thus, carried out of the throng of people, she knew what to do. Drawing her dagger from its sheath, she plunged it into the man's spine with a cry. The gold cloak howled in pain but collapsed, Arya continuing to stab him until his grip slackened and she could leap off. Get her! Without warning, she was kicked to the ground, coughing out dust and soot as another explosion detonated in the distance. I'm gonna fuck you raw, she heard behind her, causing her fear to spike. She was still a maiden. Gurgles and a splatter of hot blood on her back followed, revealing the hound burying an axe into the man's neck and shoulder. I'm starting to think you want to piss me off, he snarled at her, drawing back the weapon and standing firm. Their initially stunned reactions changing to anger, the gold cloaks charged. Sandor struck first, the strength of his axe beheading a man where he stood before he gave ground. His lack of armor made him quicker than he looked, retreat allowing him to sidestep the frontal attacks of his enemies, and slam the axe head into a gold cloak's back. Seeing a flash, he brought the shaft up quickly, batting aside a furious hack from another's morning star. It seemed as things shifted quickly, twirling needle into proper riposte. She smashed the hilt into her attacker's face, stunning him long enough to spin around and shove her dagger into his eye. Quickly after, she ran headlong into another, needle going through a gap in his mail and impaling his innards. He fell over with a groan, rubble from a long-off explosion showering them all. One gold cloak felt a hot chunk of debris hit his bare neck. He screamed in pain, suffering mercifully ended as a large hammer smashed his head like a melon. A quick glance confirmed Arya's sighting from earlier. Gendry. The young bull smiled, life having suited him well, with bulging muscles and a powerful stride. Glutted with stolen and pilfered food, the gold cloaks were no match. Arya darting around their swings to stab and slash at them, while Gendry and the hound just barreled through them, as if they were the walking skeletons that comprised the majority of the small folk. It all ended, rather quickly. As the dust settled, Sandor brushed off his vest and picked up a greatsword, one of the gold cloaks carried, breathing heavily, with soot and ash raining down all over the city. No one cared that 2 youngsters and an old bruiser were surrounded by 10 gold cloaks broken and gutted upon the ground. Only screams, tens of thousands running straight for the Red Keep to escape the Inferno, and Stannis' forces. Still, best not be around that many corpses.
Come on.
Gendry yelled, grabbing Arya's hand and practically dragging her into the shadows of the city. Places that even someone keen on wiping out the city wouldn't care to put wildfire. Overhead, the blazing projectiles of Stannis' trebuchets continued to unleash their hellish bracketing of King's Landing. The smith realized what was about to come. Brace yourself, he hurled Arya to the filthy ground, covering her with his body. Sandor wasn't far behind in lying prone. In spite of the chaos, Arya felt every bit of his powerful body on top of her. The thought ended as the ground shook. A green-white cloud of flame and light erupting close. Very close. The shockwave slammed into them, blocking out the scream that Arya unleashed that made her throat ache. Hot debris fell all around, but none on top of any of them, aside from little pebbles that burned upon skin. Eventually, all left was the growing mushroom cloud, one of many blooming over the city. Arya felt Gendry ease off her, then his hand to yank her up, only to embrace her. Arya, his voice cracked with emotion, though far deeper than when she knew him last. You stupid bull, she replied, though reciprocating the embrace. I had it under control. Arya felt him smirk against her hair, and rather enjoyed it. Fuck. You're still alive. The hound greeted Gendry with such compassionate words, even slapping him on the back, but the situation ended any hope of a true reunion. Say your goodbyes. We're going hunting in the Red Keep. Gendry pulled back, looking at Arya with shock. You can't possibly... Arya's eyes narrowed. I do. You should go, Gendry. Go be safe and live your life. Hesitating for a moment, Gendry's blue eyes hardened as he shook his head. Not a chance. You're not doing this without me. Gendry, normally Arya would yell at anyone that got in her way, but for the young bull that had been one of the few people she learned to trust while on the run, don't be stupid. I'm not worth it. She didn't want this, but her conscience couldn't handle Gendry being hurt because of her. He placed a hand on her shoulder. I don't care, I'm coming. Besides, you don't know one way of getting into the fucking Red Keep. I've explored the tunnels plenty of times, the ones my god built that open up into the beach. But do you know the best way to the beach that avoids the explosions, fires, or fleeing people? The cacophony around them belied Gendry's words. I'll take that as a no. Are the two of you gonna fuck, or are we doing this cunt? Sandor snarled, tying the scabbard of his pilfered greatsword to his back. Arya glanced away, keeping silent as she followed Gendry towards the docks. And her destiny. It's him. The Wrath of the North. I thought he was fucking dead. Stepping forward atop the dead grass, doing his best to avoid the corpses and still steaming puddles of oil and flesh that dotted the approach to the Gate of the Gods, Jon eyed each of the men warily. You fight for Stannis. They bore the sigil of the Sparrow of House Caron on their surcoats, while two ragged flaming hearts fluttered from posts upon the walls, but he had to be sure. For King Stannis. First of his name, he added, being mindful of formality. But it didn't seem like the score of men guarding the gate even cared about formality at this point. Never mind a war, they looked at him as if he was some sort of god. Aye, said the dirty man that seemed to be their leader. His sword was sheathed, and he removed his helm to reveal a face streaked with grease and soot. 7 be praised for your safe return, Lord Stark. We fought with you at Winterfell and North Hill, Lord Stark, another called out, propping a crossbow against the stone. We'll fight with you till the end of days. A chorus of eyes broke out at that. I really did earn their trust. On the battlefield, he assumed. Unfortunately, these were the first that had borne some witness to him, as a warrior. As common grunts in the Baratheon war machine, he wouldn't get much. He needed to find Stannis. His Grace, where is he? Jon demanded in his most authoritative voice. The leader of the men nodded. He's advancing to the Red Keep, my lord. Find one of the highborns. They'll keep you squared away till the city's secure. Nodding, Jon took one last look at the star-struck bannerman before making his way through the splintered wreck that was one of the great gates of King's Landing, only to walk into something out of his nightmares. Not even the depths of his agony and shattered soul could compare to the sheer horror of the landscape surrounding him. He had never seen King's Landing, but the image of a vibrant and bustling city filled his mind. The outskirts near the Gate of the Gods was certainly bustling with bannermen of 4 separate kingdoms, but Jon couldn't call it vibrant. In fact, they were more like gravediggers. The buildings were collapsed wrecks, gutted out from the massive blasts of wildfire. Soot and ash covered everything. Small fires still burning everywhere, the men giving them a wide berth. Jon didn't expect himself to be recognized, but in the chaos, he wasn't even noticed. All sense of organization had devolved into a confused shuffle of rogue men and small bands still under the control of officers. The latter did what they could to restore order. Prisoners were shepherded into ragged prison camps against the walls. Battered small folk, treated the same in spite of their non-combatant status, bodies of which there were a lot of, were unceremoniously dumped into massive craters blasted into the earth. From the areas of complete collapse, still smoking from wildfire detonations, Jon mused there wouldn't be even parts of bodies to collect. 7 hells. As he staggered through the carnage, the death, memories of Duskendale came to mind, of Daenerys casting her dragon's fire upon him and his men, immolation and destruction, but oddly controlled, one that doesn't rage out of control. In the distance, another explosion went off as the trebuchets continued to bracket the city, bringing an inferno to thousands of innocents. There was no control in this, Cersei and Stannis throwing everything they had at each other without a damn for consequences. His head ached, his soul filled with pain. Nothing seemed real except the prick of hot ash falling on his skin. For those without organization, they found the destruction as an opportunity. combing the ruins for anything that tickled their fancy. Greedy hands pilfered whatever valuables they could find. Others they had more sinister motives. "Please!" A scream drew Jon out of his daze, focus returning to his mind as he looked towards the sound of the voice. "Don't hurt me." A chorus of laughs followed. "Didn't have to, bitch." 3 men surrounded a pretty young woman, evident in spite of her ripped clothes and soot-stained face. "Give us your cunt and you won't be hurt." One of the men punched her in the stomach, felling her as he then went to unbuckle his trousers. A fire burned within Jon. Apparently his sense of morality hadn't died along with him. "You! Stop!" he bellowed, advancing on the men. They apparently didn't recognize him, based on the looks of annoyance and derision they cast his way. "Get the fuck out of here, Norther," the lead man hissed. All of them had the glowing state of House Baratheon emblazoned on their surcoats. "I said, get the fuck away." "Let her go," Jon hissed back, voice dark, only for the bannerman to lunge at him, fist connecting with Jon's face. Fire suddenly blazed in his eyes, an icy wind howling within his shattered soul, as he batted away another right hook, uppercutting the man in the jaw, breaking his teeth. The soldier howled in pain. Staggering back, Jon did not let up, charging and knocking him to the ground. Falling atop him, his fist rocked back and slammed into the man's face and shoulder again and again, the most primal of roars filling his ears. He only just noticed that the roar was his own. Hesitating for the slightest moment at the bloody mess he left, the Fossaway soldier drew his blade and swung at him, cutting through the leather cuirass and slicing a superficial wound on his side. Without hesitating, Jon drew Longclaw and sliced off the man's sword hand. 3 more slices found the attacker disemboweled and dying. Jon huffed, breathing loud as his gray eyes looked at the 2 other offenders. "Well, do you fucking want some?" They looked to be pissing themselves. "What is? Lord Stark?" Turning, Jon found a crowd watching him, while a large man with a close-cropped beard approaching. "Yes, and you, Lord Roland Caron, by the gods." He looked completely shocked to see Jon. "We were told you were dead." A hollow chuckle left Jon's lips. I was. He left it at that. "Where is the king?" Biting his lip, Caron pointed to the Red Keep. "I'd advise waiting till the city is secure and all the fires die out." They'd have to wait a while, Jon was certain of that. Silent. Stone still without a single sign of her original zeal upon her face. All blood drained from Cersei Lannister's face. How could this have happened? She looked out at the pallor of smoke and ash that wafted from the gutted-out city. How could we have lost? Ymni grabbed Widow's Wail from the table, sheathing it in his scabbard before motioning to a servant for Cersei's traveling cloak. "It matters not. All that matters now is life or death." The servant, a young girl, returned with the garment only for Cersei to hiss at her. "Stay away from me, peasant." "Sister, stop," Jaime yelled. "Take the damn thing so we can get out of here. Time's running short." Cersei sighed and gestured at the servant until they ran away. She turned to Jaime with a long face. "I'd hoped the wildfire would be enough." "You didn't think he'd use catapults to set off the rest, I suppose," Jaime said, "though both of you are mad for both things." "I'm mad?" Cersei nearly yelled. "I'm trying to save the city." "By using wildfire?" Jaime scoffed, throwing his hands into the air. "Thousands died today, because of you, and Stannis," he added at the end. Jaime then braced himself for the inevitable tirade that would come his way. But such didn't happen. Instead, his sister and lover was quiet, subdued. Well, no sense crying over spilled milk at this point. She traced a hanging banner of their house, the mighty rearing lion mocking the wounded, dying cats that they were. "It's a shame, Shammay," Cersei whispered. "We have to die. No one's getting out of this palace alive." He held up his hands. "I'm not giving up on our lives just yet." "You must kill me," she cut him off. "Shimei, it has to be you." Cersei gasped. She closed the distance between them, wrapping him in a hug he didn't return. "You can't let Stannis get to me. I don't know what he'll do," Ymni replied, monotone. "He told you what he'd do." "Please, I can't." She walked into his arms, clutching his gambeson. "Don't let him get me. Please, Jaime." "Cersei, you're pregnant." "I can't. The child." "Don't worry about that. It won't matter anyway," Cersei told him, shaking her head. "I need this." Her hands went to his face. "Please." Door flying open, Qyburn hurried in with the entirety of the Queen's Guard surrounding him. They immediately fanned out the screen, the Queen from unknown threats. "Your Grace," the old maester turned hand began. "The usurper's forces approach the Red Keep. There exists no force to stop them." No time could be wasted. Jaime and her guards hustling Cersei down the winding stairs towards the gardens and the path to the beach, where a skiff waited, but luck was not on their side. Upon entering the throne room, the noise of footsteps and yelling out grew louder and louder until overwhelming. Before they knew it, the barred doors of the throne room rattled and rattled. Over the racket, they heard a booming voice. "Cersei, I've come for you. You can't hold me back forever." The stag had come, cornered the lion. Cersei's face started to turn every shade of red. Her queenly persona melted all the way off. She trembled as the most real tears she'd ever shed filled her eyes so much. Her vision blurred. Her hand went to the hilt of Widow's Wail on Jaime's hip, but he grabbed her as well. "What are you doing?" he asked her, panicked. "He can't catch me. We must hurry, Your Grace." Fallon Swan cried out, waving towards the back exit to the throne room. The door that led not to the colonnade but to the gardens and Maegor's holdfast. Another boom echoed against the massive doors, Stannis' men bashing a battering ram against it. "We can head to a boat, sail to Euron's fleet." His words were cut off as a small figure leapt on his back, dagger wedged under his helm and gorget to jab right through his throat. A few gurgling sputters and he collapsed into the embrace of death. The figure landed back on her feet, drawing a needle-thin sword in her other hand as two other, larger men appeared behind her. "I swore you'd see my real face when I do this," the lead attacker said, voice feminine but filled with loathing. "What is the meaning of this?" Cersei hissed, ignoring the words. "How dare you small folk filth harm your queen's sworn swords?" A ghost of a smirk crossed the young woman's face. "What's the matter? You don't remember me? I remember you. The North remembers." Meeting her gray eyes, Cersei's widened only to narrow again. "Arya Stark," she chuckled. "You don't look like a boy anymore. Well, less like a boy. It ends now, Cersei. You're at the top of my list, and it is time that you die." Boom, boom. Stannis' men serenaded Arya's threats. "For you, at least." She motioned to her surviving Queen's Guard. "Kill them." The Queen's Guard drew their blades, beginning to fan out around the intruders that threatened their queen and their only means of escape. Except for Ser Gregor. He only stared at the scarred visage of his brother. Qyburn's manipulations, fading as the hate he held deep in his dark soul for Sandor bubbled forth. Sandor glared at him with equal hate. "I know ya remember me, fucker. Just you and me." Yindri, not wanting to get in the middle of the giants as they clashed, raised his hammer and charged at one of the Queen's Guard. Arya wasn't far behind, leaping into the fight without abandon. Yemi moved to draw Widow's Wail, but Cersei held him back. "No, you stay here. Protect me." He couldn't deny her, even as the hope for any sort of ending not mired in pain and loss faded quickly. Battering rams started to crack the beams, holding the doors closed. Amongst the fighting, the Mountain and the Hound continued to stare at each other. "Well, cunt," Sandor bellowed, holding his great sword tightly in front of him. "Come at me. We end this here tonight. A perfect end to House fucking Clegane." The Mountain said nothing, but his red eyes narrowed behind his helm. Massive greatsword drawn by his meaty hands, without warning, he erupted at his brother. He flayed his sword in a wide arc, one that Sandor dodged with agility normally reserved for smaller men. Gregor's blade crashed into a column, the force chopping a third of the way through it and crushing stone into a cloud of dust. He drew it back just in time to parry Sandor's counterattack. Steel clashing against steel, Sandor swung, only for a sloppy yet powerful blow, to block and push him away. Another cloud of dust filled the air as he ducked it behind a decorative statue of some Lannister king or other. Gregor's blow pulverizing it into a million pieces. He ducked under another swing and lunged with his axe, the head piercing a weak point in the thick black armor plate into his brother's chest. And yet, Gregor felt not a thing, merely slamming his fist into the Hound's jaw and sending him reeling. Without even a sound, he yanked out the axe, splitting it in two with one meaty fist, a black ooze seeping slowly out of the hole in his armor. Completely inhuman, a killing machine. Spitting out blood and swill from his brother's blow, Sandor spotted his larger brother swinging his sword up to slice downward, just as he did to Elia Martell. No fucking way! You bitch! Fuck you! He snarled, charging into the swing. Sandor crashed right into Gregor's center mass, pitching them both backward till they shattered through a priceless stained glass window, not blasted apart in the shockwaves, tumbling straight into the gardens and away from the fight, brewing in the throne room. Boom, boom. Arya's control was slipping. She was too close to her quarry, too close to finally killing the most important name on her list since Joffrey's demise. The Queen's Guard. She was sure it was Boros Blount. Challenging her had a strength about him, but was slow and sloppy in his attacks. Almost took the fun out of it. Almost. Ducking and jinking around his strikes, a wild slash exposed his unarmored armpit to Needle, which Arya took advantage of. Sarah Boros cried out in pain, staggering back as blood poured out of the wound. Smirking darkly, Arya moved in for the kill, leaping up just as she did with Balin Swan, only this time slamming the dagger through the eye-hole of the helm, straight through Boros' eye and into his skull. The fat knight collapsed like a sack of meat, blood spurting all over the ground. Suddenly a blade swung out of nowhere, stabbing right through Arya's side even as she tried to dodge, crying out in the sudden pain. Arya watched as another Queensguard raised his sword, ready to deliver the killing blow, only for his head to be caved in by a hammer. Airy. It was Gendry. We have to get out of here. Stannis is coming. Boom. Boom. Give up, Lannister. Stannis bellowed through the splintering wood. I'm coming for you. Yamay, it has to be now. We're out of time. Cersei wailed. She backed off of him. Her tears were uncontrollable. She held her hands up, out of energy. Just tired. Please, Yamay. Don't let me burn. I don't want to go like that. Jaime flashed his eyes to the throne room doors, opening more and more by every second, arms and legs stuck through the small gap there. He returned his eyes to Cersei. Time began to slow for him. Reluctantly, he drew Widow's Wail. Even though that's what Cersei wanted, she crumbled further. Falling to her knees, she closed her eyes, arms falling limp. Taking measured steps closer, Jaime started to tremble. Arya caught a glimpse of what was going on and yelled out, "No! She's mine!" Gendry ignored her screams, lifting her up in his arms and racing for the exit. "Let me go!" Through the agony of her wound, she still tried to hit at Gendry's back and chest. "I've come all this way. Not for nothing. That's my kill." Jaime tried to ignore her as the impossible thought became extremely real. Killing Cersei. His hand went to the hilt, not to ready himself, but in an attempt to steady him. It didn't work. For all her faults, he loved Cersei. She'd become a shell of the woman she once was, but it was still her. His memory of her was stronger than anything else. He'd always have that. He thought he'd always have her. They had children, but they were gone. It was just them. Maybe there was another still growing inside her. In a better world, they could try again. But that wasn't an option. No matter what, they always had each other. Through it all. Now she wanted to go. Then it'd just be him. All alone. His father was gone. Mother long gone. Brother miles away, and on the opposite side. Sister, his lover, wanted to go. Without him. Take their fourth child with her. The child, that's like 2 lives. Not just one. Not only was he already a kingslayer, then he'd murder his unborn child along with the only woman he'd ever loved. Horrible thought. Could be his reality. Could he ever recover from that? Would he? Many other questions ran through his mind as what meager time he had to decide became fewer. Half a body pushed through a crack in the giant doors, Stannis Baratheon, the first through the breach. His eyes centered on the scene before him, though still some distance away. "Kingslayer, don't you dare, don't you take this from me. She's mine." Cersei's eyelids flew open, horrified again. "Yamay, there's no time. Do it." She figured her looking him in the eyes wasn't helping, so she covered her face with her hands. "Please, Yamay, I love you. I've always loved you." Trying not to think, Ime raised his sword high up. He had intentions of swinging with his eyes closed, but his brain caught up. He couldn't find the strength Cersei needed. The sound of Widow's Well clanging against the marble ground reopened Cersei's eyes, her eyes glancing between it and Ime, who gave her the most apologetic look he could muster. "I'm sorry, I can't. I can't do it. Not again. Not you." By then Stannis moved fully into the open space. The gap big enough, many of his men were right behind him. The Staying drew his sword and started as fast as he could towards the throne. The only thing he could see, the only thing he's ever truly wanted. Right within reach, after so long, his time had come. His adrenaline so high, his aching leg wound didn't bother him. The three leftover Kingsguard backed off Arya and Gendry to try to defend their queen. Though when they saw the mass heading towards them, they tossed their swords aside. No point fighting for a queen who had already lost. Gendry grabbed hold of Arya, who just started to wail. "No, I can't leave. I have to kill her." "There's no chance. We'll just be caught," Gendry told her, glancing at Stannis running towards Cersei with dozens in tow. "You want to get in his way?" Unspoken, Cersei made a move for Widow's Wail, the only thing she could think to do, but Shaimi moved to stand in front of her, grabbing her. "What are you doing? Get off me!" "Maybe we can make a deal. You're pregnant." He could be merciful. She stilled in his hand and looked up at him, finally calming to utterly still, but her tone was serious. "You always were the stupidest Lannister." Afraid, I selled and released her, going expressionless. Cersei pushed past him to the sword. The weight bothered her, but she lifted it. Stannis and his pack neared to them, making it to the steps. Cersei leveled the blade at Stannis. The stag slapped his chest and laughed. "Oh, girly, what's your plan?" He kept moving up the steps toward her. "You've lost, your army is nothing. I have everything, the upper hand." His eyes stilled on the throne, choosing to move toward it instead. He'd seen it before, of course, been extremely close, but never that close, within breathing distance. The throne had also never been his before. His outstretched hand began to tremble, but more than anything else, he wanted to know what it felt like under his touch. Finally, he could touch it, soon sit on it. His palm fell heavy on one of the hilts. The metal was cold, but nothing felt better. His body filled his energy. Never had Stannis Baratheon felt more alive. He still sensed Cersei next to him, which disturbed him. Gradually, he turned his head to her. She still held the sword at him. He questioned why one of his men hadn't grabbed her by now. Feeling invincible, he sheathed his blade and moved at her. The tip of the blade shook because her body did the same. As Stannis got closer, she retreated. But the Stannis became impatient. With a quick motion, he took a big step to her. So fast she couldn't register. A strike to her hands sent the widow's wail back to the ground. Cersei was so horrified, her body went rigid under Stannis's even stare. His presence invaded her space. He wasn't that much taller than her, but she shrunk down. More and more of Stannis's men filled the giant room, all coming up to the throne to watch. "I told you what I would do." Stannis's face twisted into a grimace as he gripped Cersei around the neck and lifted her up, using his other hand to rip the crown off her head and slam it against the ground. "I told you what I would do," Stannis growled. "Didn't I? Didn't I? You filthy Lannister." "Joy. Joyma." Cersei ground out, twiddling her feet, air running out. "Help." But the subject of her plea stood still, eyes downcast to his feet. Her call didn't seem to urge him. Stannis loosened his grip and set her back down on her feet. She fell to her knees, gasping for air. The future king flexed the hand that was around her neck, over and over again. His feet carried him over to Jaime, who wouldn't meet his eyes. "Look at me, Kingslayer," but Jaime didn't move a muscle. "Kingslayer, look at me." At the raising of his voice, Jaime obeyed. Slowly, he raised his gaze. First looking at Cersei, only her hands on the ground, holding her up. Then Stannis, whose cold yet murderous face nearly sent him to his arse. "Kingslayer, what did I say I would do?" Stannis asked him, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Do you recall?" He actually didn't want to reply, reaching down to pull a thin blade out of his boot. Once he pulled it out of its tiny scabbard. Ime was amazed by how sharp it looked. Stannis held it up. "Cut your other damn hand off with this." "I could, but I'm not interested in you. Not now at least." Once his presence neared Cersei again, she started to sob, tears falling to the floor, wishing she'd turned Widow's Well on herself. Stannis reached down and pulled her up by her hair, up to eye level with him. "Do you remember what I said I'd do?" he asked her plainly. "Yes," she muttered, face soaked in tears. "Please don't." "I'm sorry, I'm a man of my word." Not allowing for Cersei to speak further, Stannis took the thin blade over her belly. He shadowed a crescent shape, intending on gutting her. That was his initial inclination. Anyway, instead he realized she deserved the fire, like everyone else. Still, he had to do what he said he'd do. Otherwise, he wasn't a king worth following. Just as not as deadly. Deep enough to cut through the fabric of her clothes, deep enough to draw plenty of blood, but shallow enough for her not to bleed out. He dragged the blade across her stomach, feeling the weak skin give in. Cersei made it seem like he was pulling her toenails out with a rusty fork. Raising her voice so loud, Stannis did wish he'd cut her throat, instead. The fabric split and soaked with her blood. When he was done, he tossed the blade aside, then pressing that hand against her wound, using the crimson-covered hand to wipe against her face. "Shut your fucking mouth! You lustful whore!" he growled at her. "You're worthless. A woman is just mostly worth the center between her legs. You used that up and made just as useless bastards. Every second you breathe in my presence is a waste. I'd end you now, but I require a much more painful death for you." He threw her down on her chest, then said to one of his nearby guards, "Find her a cell. Her brother too. I'll send for them later." Stannis didn't give anything else his attention, except the throne, after that. Unbothered as the Lannisters were dragged away, nothing but a guttural, malevolent rasp left Gregor Clegane's mouth as he charged yet again at his brother. The massive claymore, clutched in his two hands, lunged and swung. Blows which would have punched through or sliced open even the thickest of armor. Sandor only just managed to miss the attacks, letting his brother push him back before he spun around. Lunging forward and swinging, Gregor caught the blow with the hilt of his claymore, his strength managing to extinguish the attack before Sandor's sword drew too close. The hound gritted his teeth, veins bulging in his neck while trying to push forward. "Why won't you fucking die?" Red eyes stared at him from behind the helm, ones as filled with hate as they had the day he burned Sandor's face. Bellowing, Sandor jerked his head forward, smashing his head into his brother's. Head-ringing, he nevertheless saw his brother stagger a bit. Knee rocketing up to slam into Gregor's inner thigh, Sandor rocketed the sword pommel to bash him upside the head, an action that sent the monstrous helm crashing to the ground. Rolling to a stop, dented and misshapen. Jumping back, Sandor witnessed the grotesque being his shit of a brother had become. In the distance, the early afternoon sun seemed to be blotted out by the massive clouds of smoke and soot. Orange-red fireballs sailed for the already burning city from Stannis' trebuchets. They simply added to the carnage, one finding another store of wildfire and detonating in a large plume of green-white flame that thunderclapped everywhere. A perfect backdrop for what Gregor Clegane had been transformed into. Standing in place, the mountain's blood-red eyes stared at Sandor. Hair non-existent, all that remained of his skin was a clammy gray pallor with blotches of black and purple. A large stitch scar raced down the side of his head, all life replaced by a malevolent coldness. "Holy fuck, you're fucking uglier than me now." The hound raised his blade, snarling. While the purple-gray skin was marred by jet-black veins, they didn't seem to move. Everything seemed a corpse about Gregor Clegane, but there was some sign of life, as the red eyes seemed to glow. Lips opened in a sort of snarl, an animalistic screech, leaving the mountain's throat as he lifted his claymore and charged. Sandor bellowed just as loud, charging as well. The hound was faster, swinging around and hacking at his brother. Yet, with a shove of his mighty arms, the claymore pushed Sandor's greatsword to the side. Ducking, he barely avoided having his arm cut off by Gregor, but the glancing blow was enough to slash a deep wound through his chainmail. "Arg!" he cried, swinging at his brother's head, only for Gregor to grab the blade with his right hand, fingers falling off, but gripped tight. A punch with the other hand bashed the hilt of Gregor's claymore into his face, breaking his nose and felling him. Hearing Gregor approach, and like the literal mountain he was, his brother towered over Sandor, sword raised for the kill, but he managed to roll out of the way as the sword slammed into the stone path, cracking the slab in two. Sandor leaped to his feet, dazed as blood dripped from his broken nose, arm burning from the wound. Fighting through the pain, he charged head-on, sidestepping a thrust and bringing the greatsword down on Gregor's right arm, severing it right above the elbow. The mountain, unfazed by the stump of his right arm, oozing black pus, snapped towards his brother and advanced. Claymore forgotten, He raised his left, running as he intended to burst open Sandor's head as he did Oberyn Martell's, in another life. But the hound was ready. In an instant he drew back his greatsword in one hand, and brought up his other crashing into Gregor's forearm, and batting it aside. Center mass open, he lunged. The tip of the greatsword punched right through the chest plate with the force Sandor brought upon it, running right through the mountain's heart. They both stood there, frozen in time, cold, dead eyes of the monster glaring down at the gritted teeth and shaking form of his scarred brother, just as the world around them erupted. Suddenly the world erupted into a haze of bright whiteness. One moment Sandor gazed into the dead eyes of his brother, and the next he was being picked up high into the air. Grip on his sword lost hells, all sense of direction lost. He tumbled through the sky while blast waves and wind crashing into him over and over like battering rams. Flying, falling, plunging. He smacked into the ground with a loud thud. Almost immediately the throbbing pain of such all-encompassing trauma passed through Sandor like a wave. Fuck. 7 fucking hells. He tried to speak, but his lungs spasmed too much. It was hard enough to breathe. Coughing, the dust seemed to puff out all around his mouth. He opened his eyes and found himself face down in the dirt. Well, sand. Much as it hurt, the pile managed to break his fall. Testing his arms, relief spread through Sandor that they seemed to work and not be twisted husks, broken beyond recognition. Foe! One syllable collapsed into agonizing coughs, though he managed to push himself, slowly, into sitting up. It exhausted him, Sandor collapsing back against a low stone wall, peppered with holes and gashes from the explosion. Head falling back, the hound looked up at the sky, seeing the same greasy black pyre rising high, only this time quite close. It didn't take him long to put 2 and 2 together. That bitch, the lioness, must have stored wildfire in the catacombs of the Red Keep. Snorting, coughing away more dust and sand that coated his face and lips, Sandor imagined wringing Cersei's neck as he should have her shit sons. If, cough, the girl doesn't gut her cough, she's burned or gutted by the stag. Fitting. Finally able to summon the energy to move even a bit, one glance to his right found a sight that made Sandor's lips slowly curl upward. There, sitting just as upright as his brother, was Sir Gregor Clegane, the body still encased in the mighty armor, yet the top half of his head blown off. The lower jaw hung limply from a burn-scarred lower mandible, neck bent down in an almost slouch. Unable to help himself, no matter how it hurt, Sandor chuckled to himself. Well, brother, he wheezed, you died handsomer than you ever lived. As much of a eulogy the mountain that rides would ever get. Hands falling to his sides, a gentle sloshing caught Sandor's attention. Well, I'll be fucked. His wineskin, it was untouched. Talk about a fucking miracle. Seated next to his brother's corpse, Sandor Clegane uncorked the lid and downed the sweet liquid. Around him, the ash of tens of thousands of formerly living souls began to fall from the sky, blanketing what remained of the city of Aegon, the Conqueror. It was unmistakable. Horrifyingly magnificent upon the horizon, and from the perch of gods and dragon lords, all could be seen. For Daenerys, she could feel even Drogon and Viserion unsettled with the sight. As it stood, her eyes were rooted to the distant point on the edge of Blackwater Bay, a massive pyre of greasy smoke marking the city of her ancestors, itself the marker of an inferno so great that she was unsure even if her dragons would be capable of creating it. A whole dozen dragons would struggle for the chaos. She was sure of it. As it stood, her eyes were wide and filled with terror just thinking of the carnage, of the loss of innocent life. Stannis, Cersei, what have you done? The grassy knolls and gray-black peaks of Dragonstone, both natural and constructed normally, brought Daenerys a sense of peace. Her birthplace, the home of her ancestors, it gave a feeling of familiarity in the bosom of the dying house. Targaryen, reduced to a rump of a barren queen and ancient man, but today, with what she had witnessed, there was no peace, no serenity, just her dark thoughts, the fog of war, and an inner worry that threatened to break out into complete panic. For she knew not if Jon had been within the inferno whose black pyre was visible from even here, as it belched ash and smoke into the sky. Land here, sweetling! Drogon hooted his response, which drew a roar from the ground. Rhaegal! As she Viserion behind them, circled the large knoll of grass that served as a landing pad and the dragon's home on the island, Daenerys felt her heart soar at the sight of green scales. It lasted for only a few moments before the worries returned, but was grateful for it. The landing was smooth, Dany barely feeling the thud on the ground. Without hesitation, she scrambled off of Drogon. "Thank you," she murmured, the black dragon letting her stroke his head. Surprising her slightly, she felt a nudge against her side that nearly toppled her. It was Rhaegal, a low rumble from his throat. Daenerys smiled wanly, hand going to his snout. "I'm all right, sweetling." Her words didn't soothe him, trying to wedge his snout against her side that he hadn't done since they arrived in Westeros. Hells, since she flew out to Duskendale, for the life of her, she didn't know why. Perhaps Rhaegal felt her worry over Jon. Now that it turned to love, he became more comforting. "I hope he's all right, Rhaegal." Unable to speak further, she rested her head on his hot scales. Luckily for her blood riders galloping towards her, Dany had bid her dragons farewell and was already walking towards the keep. While part of her wished for just a little bit of time alone with her thoughts, the worries within made her grateful that she would be soon taken to her council. "Khaleesi," they bowed in their saddle. "Praise be the great stallion that you've returned unharmed." She was genuinely grateful for their words. "Thank you, Cavero." She noticed a horse right alongside, one she simply walked to and mounted. "Escort me to the keep." They all hooted in unison, and the Queen and Blood Riders were soon galloping. Tyrion, Barristan, Missandei, and Varys were waiting for her on the last set of steps to Dragonstone Castle itself. "Gods be good," Missandei exclaimed, breaching protocol to hug her friend and queen. "You've returned victorious." Daenerys hugged back, but settled a hard stare on the three advisors behind her lady-in-waiting. Pulling back, she smiled at Missa before falling back into business. "Tell me everything you know." As Tyrion opened his mouth, she shut him off with an open hand. "Before you give me your eloquent explanation, I already know about the destruction of King's Landing." He sighed deeply. I suppose it was better for you to witness it personally." He was glad he didn't, but Tyrion had his own reasons for that. "Apparently my sister had more wildfire left over from her merriment at the Septet of Baelor."
And from your actions at Blackwater Bay?
Daenerys added, watching as Tyrion quieted, averting his gaze. Hissing out a breath, Daenerys motioned all four of them to follow her. "Tell me, Sarah Barristan, why shouldn't I hunt down every member of Tyrion's house and have them killed over this?" The imp seemed to wince, but she didn't see it. It was likely rhetorical, but Barristan attempted to answer. "If Stannis wins that battle, they're all dead anyway. If not, the Lady Jaina in the Westerlands is innocent of any of Tywin or Cersei's schemes, so I would advise sparing her." Gods, she felt heavy. Fatigued from the weight of it all, her victory in Dorne only created more problems that she needed to attend to. And now this, do we know who won? Varys? The eunuch tucked his lips between his teeth. "My birds did send reports, but once the wildfire exploded, there hasn't been much to say. All I know are the initial preparations." She swiveled her head around. "Well, let's hear them." Varys nodded. "Stannis assaulted the Gate of the Gods with all his forces. Once they broke through against the Lannister defenses, I assume that's when Cersei let off the wildfire. After that—" "Oh, it was Cersei all right," Tyrion chuckled darkly. "After the Mountain killed Stannis Baratheon, there's no out for her. Remembering how she almost gave Tommen poison when Stannis first came knocking. Gods, he would have rather dealt with that than Cersei. Even when trying to have Mendon Moore kill him, was she more reasonable than now? Do we know if either is dead? Someone took the city." These were questions that infuriated her not to know the answer. There was one other question she truly wished to ask above all others, but hesitated. "No, Your Grace." Barristan was equally frustrated, only that most of the city is a pyre. Daenerys closed her eyes. "Gods, I spared the city of my dragon fire to save all those innocents, and the lion and stag annihilate all of them anyway." She was absolved of any blame or guilt over it, but that didn't make it less repulsive to her. But the true worry deep down finally bubbled to the surface. And Jon, Lord Stark? Dany's stomach churned at the wait for an answer. All three advisors looked at each other, not knowing what to say. "Spest it out," demanded Missandei. Varys, clearing his throat, took the question. "From leaving Duskendale, none of my birds have gotten any whispers of Lord Stark." How is that possible?" I don't know, he could have been with Stannis. Or not, we just can't be sure. The last of Dany's resolve cracked. Leave me, she barked. I wish to be alone. All complied with her command, though Missy escorted her to the royal chambers without incident. She huffed and started to pace. Jon Stark was her weakness, and she both hated it and embraced it. Out of all of this, she only wished Jon was safe. Then she would be content. Unable to move any further, Arya collapsed to her knees into the ruins of what seemed to be a tavern. Her lungs burned and ached. She did her best to hack them out of her very body, coughing and billowing dark gray clouds of dust and ash. She wanted to move, she wanted to just roll over onto her back and sleep, but she was too exhausted. So Arya just remained there, crouched on all fours, as she coughed and puked her organs out into the rubble.
I failed.
I failed, her father unavenged, her brother unavenged. Her innocence, Sansa's innocence, all would never be given justice, because she was too weak to do the deed and drive her sword through Cersei Lannister's belly. And as for the devastation all around her, I was too late, couldn't kill her quick enough, and as a result, a dry heave rocked her painfully just as someone knelt beside her. Arms wrapping around her waist and adding just a little bit of comfort. Airy, relax. Just breathe. My fault, she managed to croak out, shaking as Gendry pulled her upright into his embrace. Almost instinctively, Arya sought him out, expending her last reserves of energy to return the embrace. I could have ended this. Gendry somehow knew what she spoke of. People like us, bastards and outcasts. There will never be an end to their hate for us. Had Cersei not blown them up, someone would. She was always going to do this. Arya. Had I been quicker, she rigged the city to blow. It was always going to happen. She had little response for that, only to sob further into his ash-stained shirt. It was weak, but Arya didn't care. After everything, only Jon and Gendry could she be vulnerable with. Neither knew how long they rested there, in that position, how long the world passed them by in a blur after their escape through the tunnels of the now partially ruined Red Keep. But ringing in Arya's ears amongst the various screams or collapsing buildings was a chant. A very distinctive chant, erupting from hundreds of different hoarse throats. Wrath of the North. Wrath of the North. Wrath of the North. Energy coursed through her again. Gendry. Off. Weakly pushing on his chest, the lad pulled back on his own. Listen, you hear that? Wrath of the North? Dunno what that means, Arya. That's what Stannis' men call Jon. It was close by, as if on the street right beside them. She rushed to the window. They were on the first floor, but the tavern was built against a ridge's side. The street was another floor below them, giving her an excellent view of the throngs of Baratheon bannermen cheering for someone. Not just someone. Jon. Arya would know him anywhere. Come on, Bull. She grabbed his wrist, knowing he'd follow her into the Seven Hells, had she asked. I'm not losing my brother again. Like a slow, ponderous swarm of ants, the battered and soot-covered survivors of King's Landing trudged towards the large square overlooking the outer ramparts of the Red Keep. They ached, they suffered, burns, broken bones, gashes, their homes and livelihoods had been gutted by the raging infernos, ignited by the two titans battling over the iron chair dwelling within the great castle. But still, they marched. Some did it because they had nowhere else to be, some because of the exhortations of the victorious Baratheon bannermen, proclaiming food, water, and medical attention for all at the Red Keep. Most, however, simply followed the throng of the crowd. Like sheep, shell-shocked and merely looking for direction. For a ruler to emerge from the ashes and finally provide the safe sheets and full bellies they merely desired. As two massive banners embroidered with the flaming stag of the new conqueror, Stannis Baratheon walked tall and proud out of the Red Keep, the home of his brother and his Targaryen ancestors, long before, now finally ripped away from the golden-haired bastards and usurpers. His leg throbbed from the strain and exertion, but he ignored it. The pain almost was numb to him, so great was the surge of energy and vigor for this day. It is mine. Finally mine. A giant pyre was built to the left of the ramparts, on which Stannis walked. A lone stake stood there without a form on it. Yet, court gutted over the years, the place usually taken by the great smattering of highborn nobles, was occupied by Stannis' officers. Randall Tarley, Roland Caron, Selwyn Evenstar Terth. All watched as Littlefinger strolled from among them towards the Stag King's side. Pinned to his doublet was the symbol for the hand of the king. "Everything is ready, your grace," he informed Stannis. His first act as hand, the simple arranging of spectacle that would further ingratiate himself to the Baratheon king. Stannis nodded. "Be done with it. I've been waiting for this moment for so long that I seek to wait no longer." Littlefinger, his arms clasped over his lower belly, cleared his throat. Presenting, returned from his conquests and liberations, the one true king of the Seven Kingdoms, Stannis of House Baratheon, first of his name, king of the Andals, Rhoynar, and first men, the prince who was promised, the Lightbringer, heir to Robert of House Baratheon, and protector of the realm. Long may he reign. Long may he reign! The shout boomed from the soldiers' throats. It was muted from the crowd, if at all. Stannis basked in it all the same. "Subjects," he announced, almost feeling his inner dragon blood roaring to the forefront. "The reign of terror is over, your pain is over, the perfidy and malevolence that has shrouded your lives since my brother's vile death has been lifted." He waited for cheers and applause that never came, but pressed on without much care. "As your rightful king, I vow to rule this land with the firm and just hand it so needs, and it begins with what will happen today. What will happen this very moment, where the evildoers meet the everlasting fires of the Lord. Bring the first forward." From the keep 3 guards dragged out a blubbering, shaking old man by his shoulders. The disgraced maester and former hand of the queen were barefoot, soles scraping along with the dirty wood and stone. Qyburn's face was covered in bruises, while more laid unseen underneath his filthy tunic, a sad, pathetic shell of who was once one of the most feared men in King's Landing. Drawing a knife, Stannis brought it to Qyburn's neck. "The king's justice begins today, and it shall start with—" The crowd started to rouse, stopping Stannis. His eyes scanned the massive assemblage for what was going on. Before he knew it, the people started to move aside for a lone figure. Many of the people had never seen him before, yet many felt like they recognized him. Perhaps it was the jet-black hair, or Valyrian steel sword at his hip. It seemed quite surreal for Jon Stark. Feet gliding along the cobblestones, one step at a time, the roars and cheers of Stannis' army greeted him, hurling the greatest of praise upon the White Wolf and Wrath of the North. By all of it, it seemed that they loved him more than they did their own king. How did this happen? But Jon knew, by instinct he knew. The old-fashioned way, upon the battlefield, fighting and bleeding and struggling for and among these men without anything but Longclaw to protect him. It was heady and heartening. It may have given Jon a sliver of happiness had he not been surrounded by reminders of the death and destruction that engulfed this city. An inferno he knew Daenerys could never cause, since she refused to, when faced with the same risks. Cersei Lannister had no such moral compunctions. Would Stannis? He could see the Stag King resting upon the front of the dais, Jon's eyes squinting to get a better glimpse of him as he continued walking forward. Even though the figure wasn't in full view, Stannis knew in his bones who it was. He withdrew the blade from Kurud's neck. "Ah, Lord Stark, welcome. You've come to see my victory." Jon walked out past the crowd, nearing the gallows-like structure. The guards moved aside as well, his eyes totally stuck on Stannis, his supposed king. "Devis told me you might be alive. I wasn't sure I totally believed him, but here you are." Jon narrowed his eyes, looking over the counterpart to Daenerys in his mind. Stannis Baratheon looked hard, a joyless man that nevertheless held no guile. Everything was out in the open, the good as well as the bad. A hard man yet an honest one, and his expression seemed pleased to see Jon back. He will reveal his true nature sooner than later. An appraisal done, Jon outstretched his hands. "Here I am. You've been away for some time. I've missed your precious insight." Slowly, Jon walked towards the raised dais. Stannis' guards passed to allow him up. Even if Jon didn't remember the past, the rest did. Jon Stark, the loyal warden of the North for their king and his most loyal skilled general. This wasn't lost on Jon, but as he listened and watched the Stagwas king, he couldn't help but wonder what this braggart could have done to earn his loyalty in times past. "He legitimized me," such was all he could think of. "Forgive me for being captured, your grace. I did my best to escape. I'm still surprised the dragon whore let you escape. She must be stupider than I thought. He missed Jon's bristling at the insults on Daenerys. Doesn't matter. As you can see, Stannis laughed, truly laughed. I've done it on my own. The words came to his mind. What did it cost you? Stannis seemed stumped. What? Everyone bears a cost to their decisions. He did. Daenerys did, and based on what he had been told, his family bore the cost of their decisions as well. What did it cost these people? Jon asked, raising his voice. Then gesturing to the townsfolk behind him. I've seen what remains of the city. It's in total complete shambles. Tens of thousands dead, on both sides and small folk alike. Your men did well to rape and steal all they wanted. I stopped what I could. For the first time, Stannis failed to recognize Jon. What's happened to you?
Much, Jon said, narrowing his gaze.
As you said, I've been gone some time. Too much time as the Dragon Queen's prisoner, Stannis said. Are you even on my side anymore?
But I don't know, my mind isn't what it was.
I can tell. Clegane began to squirm under Stannis's grip. In response, he pressed his knife back on the older man's throat. You must want to die. How long are you going to hold him? Jon challenged. Kill him or don't. You're wasting my time. Stannis continued to struggle with the person he saw. Nothing his eyes saw reminded him of the Jon he knew. Aside from his physical appearance, other than that hair tied back and some new scars, you look exactly the same as I last saw you. Yet you're not the same. The Jon I knew preserved the lives of those who deserved it. You think he deserves to live? Stannis shrugged. Good point. As many times before, I'll take your advice. Not wasting another second, he jabbed the blade deep into Qyburn's neck. The poor man had no time to react. He would have reached for his neck, but Stannis kept him restrained. The deep crimson spouted out, covering Qyburn's robes, even some wetting the steps before Jon. After a few moments, Stannis let go of him. Qyburn's body tumbled down the stairs, falling to Jon's feet. With a gesture, Stannis invited Jon up to the top. Slowly, Jon waded over Qyburn and followed up. He wasn't able to see what lay on the top of that makes-up rampart. But as he rose to the top, he understood. This was Stannis' cleaning house, because his reign couldn't have remnants. All of Cersei's Queensguards stood up there in chains. 4 of them. A handful of lord-looking men were on their knees next to the knights. Stannis regarded them with contempt. I gave you the chance to bend the knee to me long ago, yet you took the claim of a bastard before me. Shaking his head, he pointed to his Kingsguards. They will take the heads of some, those who know their deaths are obvious. I can kill every single one of you, or I'll bend the knee, and some will survive. Older lords nodded, falling to their knees while the younger ones let resignation dawn on their faces. Tears welling at the thought of losing their fathers. Even at her worst, Daenerys gave an actual choice of mercy for loyalty. Jon's eyes kept moving around and they settled on a face that seemed familiar. Dirty golden hair, bright green eyes staring him down. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer. Jon knew they had met in the past, albeit briefly. Their armies had clashed, but he wasn't sure they physically saw each other. Yet Jon merely knew it was him by reputation. They both held a stare. Jaime had recognized him as well. Jon thought he might get a hateful stare. Instead, the Kingslayer didn't look like he had anything left. Stannis walked back to the front and began speaking to the crowd. Probably about him, but he wasn't listening. A young girl caught his eye, with crusty scarring on her face. A much older man standing behind her. Davos, he recognized. The Onion Knight locked eyes with him, and smiled. At a certain point, the girl noticed who he was looking at, and also grinned at Jon. It didn't take him much longer to realize the girl was Princess Shireen. He didn't recall much interaction with her, though he knew in reality they probably did. He began to listen to Stannis after that. I've come to save you, of course. You lived under a horrid queen who didn't care for you, who sat by whilst you suffered, who fornicated with her brother and made vicious bastards, passing them off as my brother's children, awful as sin. But I am here today to make sure her sins don't go unpunished. Everyone should be held accountable for their actions. That is why Stannis lifted his left hand high, a signal, from where Jon couldn't see exactly. But 2 Baratheon bannermen came rolling out, carrying more, dragging a woman with orange blonde hair. Stannis began speaking again. I've brought Cersei Lannister to atone. To his delight, the crowd erupted in cheers. to atone for what she's done to you. Eyes falling on the Lannister Queen, Jon was faced with not a foe that could grapple toe-to-toe with Daenerys and Stannis at the same time. The woman before him had fallen into a self-evident madness. In a short time in captivity, Cersei's black dress was frayed and stained. Close-cropped hair was nevertheless frizzled in wild clumps, eyes almost the same shade of green as wildfire as they swiveled widely about. A gag covered her mouth, to which she screamed through and snapped at it. Pathetic. Truly pathetic. Jon held no sympathy for her. If the townsfolk were upset by the destruction of their homes, they didn't outwardly show it. Everyone got loud, raving to see Cersei go before their eyes. Stannis bared a toothy grin at the sight, raising his arms to the sky. Jon found himself moving closer to Davos, really the only person he actually knew there. The scarred girl kept her eyes on him, somewhat hopeful looking. He wasn't sure why. Davos said something to the girl, then stepped out closer to him. "Jon," he said, with a small smile, but it disappeared quickly. "Things have changed." "Seems that way," Jon replied grimly, "but I don't have much to compare it to. Really. I don't remember what he was like before." "Nothing like this," Davos said. "Never like this." "He burned Mance Rayder and Olenna," Jon pointed out. "Aye, but he was never excited about doing it." He looked back at Cersei. While the means did unsettle him, Cersei clearly deserved this and more. The man has won a great victory against a truly horrid foe. Perhaps he's earned a bit of excitement. Sir Davos. There's a difference between relishing a victory and relishing in the pain of others, no matter how vile. The idea of Daenerys came to mind. The old Jon never would have engaged in such brutality, and he hoped never to see it again. "What are you talking about?" "Lord Stark, you've not been with him. Regardless, the time you did spend with him, you don't remember." Sir Davos said, sounding exasperated. "This is not the man that legitimized you. Now he acts entirely out of his own self-interest. He cares not for the people. I noticed the state of the city on my stroll up here. I spoke against that." "What happened?" "Exactly." As more lofty speeches exhorted the crowd, cheers and cries for justice masked their words. Cersei laid wildfire. It was set off. The explosion killed countless of Stannis' forces. We knew there was more beyond the gates. He reckoned to let fly fire at the city, set off the rest, which worked, but caused the death of thousands of innocents. Suddenly Jon's mind flashed back to one of the earliest vivid memories. A dream. His last before waking up into the shattered existence he now found himself. A burned city. A large crowd. Fire. Fire everywhere. They hadn't been just illusions, but visions. Green sight, as it was called. Some king of the people. Aye, indeed. Davos averted his gaze, ashamed. I tried to stop it, but I failed. Jon swallowed as Cersei Lannister was tied to the stake. "I'm sure had it been possible, you would have succeeded." Davos chuckled mirthlessly. "For once you are the optimist of the two of us." Meanwhile, Stannis approached the stake. "Your knife, Sir Edric." His nephew bowed, removing the dagger from its sheath and handing it to the king. Reaching Cersei, Stannis took the knife and cut off the gag, letting it fall to the pitch-soaked fetters below. "You cunt!" she screamed. Stannis backhanded her, leaving a bright pink welt on her cheek. "I gave you a chance at survival. You turned it down and murdered my wife. What do you expect me to do? Your fate is exactly what I told you it was. You won't break me." Stannis smiled. "I suspect the flames will." Any last words? "Whore?" While crazed, while broken down, for but a moment lucidity shone in her green eyes. "I only regret that I will not see your impending death by fire." Stannis grinned. "The fire is mine, dear Cersei." Still grinning in an almost manic glee, he stuck the dagger deep into Cersei's side, relishing in her scream. For Cersei, who died without a face. Removing the dagger from her side, he held it high for the people to witness. "She styles herself a god among us, but a god doesn't bleed." With the cheers and shouts, he moved to where the executioner waited, with the torch, fire flickering at the tip. "The time has come to send this demon back where she belongs." Not holding back any longer, he tossed the torch into the fetters, watching them ignite almost instantly. Quiet lasted but a moment before the screams started. Cersei thrashed as much as the ropes binding her allowed, all pride and nobility lost as the tall flames licked at her feet and legs. Her throat grew hoarse with the agonizing screams that echoed far and wide. "Don't look, princess." Davos cringed, covering Shireen's eyes. Jon could only stare, not even the hot flames warming his soul, imagining the flames of Daddy's dragon on the battlefield. Such was at least quick. Clean. Nothing like this. Stannis just skipped giddily over to Jaime, whose eyes and mouth held open wide as the bannerman kept him rooted upon the ground. He got close to the Kingslayer, next to his face. "You see her, Lannister? She's roasting. I hope you never forget the sound of her voice as the flames cured her of her iniquity. She's never been purer, except for when she burst from your mother's womb." He said nothing, eyes welling with tears of shame. Forgive me for not saving you. I told you what I would do." He grinned as wide as his face allowed. "My only regret is that your father and your bastards weren't in the flames with her," Stannis snarled. "Don't worry, you'll meet the same fate. You'll join them in the flames. I just wanted you to be here to watch your sister ascend." His eyes closed, unable to bear what was happening. Stannis grunted in contempt. "Your incest has cost you much. Even if those bastards were still alive, I'd toss them on the pyre with her." Turning, he continued to watch his greatest triumph before him. The flames had engulfed Cersei completely, slowly roasting her inside out as her screams turned visceral, shrieking inhuman wails that caused all but the most hardened and sadistic of men to wince. Music to his ears. The crowd began to stir, then erupt once they realized what had happened. Cersei's incessant wails finally ceased. Her head slumped over, a blade stuck in above her breast. Stannis' eyes widened as far as humanly possible. His feet carried him a bit closer to the fire for a better look. When he noticed that Cersei was truly dead, even though the flames still melted her flesh, he couldn't form words, but his voice raised to the heavens above, arms flinging over his head, face red as it's ever been. Arya stepped out where everyone could see her. It didn't take long for Stannis' gaze to lock with hers. She hit her fist against her chest. "My kill." Stannis stomped his foot and yelled as loud as he could. "Fucking kill her! Catch her!" He looked around to some nearby guards. Jon had stepped up to watch the scene right after Cersei was hit. His eyes settled on Arya, and she, for him. Her face exploded into a shit-eating grin. Jon's countenance ended up being a bit more lost, mostly because he felt like he should know the person he was looking at. Then a murky memory flooded his eyes, of running around a muddy courtyard, chasing a girl much smaller than him. They swung wooden swords at one another. Gendry came up to grab Arya by the arm. He basically dragged her away, but she called out to Jon, "Jon, Jon, I'll find you." Her voice recalled Jon from his mind, back to the present, uncertain what he'd just seen. Though he recognized this girl must have been one of his sisters from Winterfell. He watched her and the man with her shove their way out the crowd, then run quickly away into the streets, as guards neared. Even that far away, the girl looked back to him, and waved. Stannis approached Jon and grabbed his arm. "Why is seven fucking hells is your sister interjecting on my punishment for the Lannister bitch?" He looked livid, blazing a fit of anger that was clearly uncharacteristic for the Stag King. "What is with you, Starks?" Jon craned his neck to coldly regard the stag. "I'm afraid I don't know, though I'd like you to let go of my arm, Your Grace." Stannis gritted his teeth and released Jon. "What has happened to you, Stark? I need my Warden of the North back. My Wrath of the North." Jon had no response. When the crowd started to leave, Littlefinger took the initiative to step up and regale them about Stannis' upcoming coronation. The stag saw planning and commending his hand for the quick thinking, stayed on Jon, using the pause to speak what was needed. "Is what Davos told me about you true? I imagine Davos might have said quite a lot. You might need to be more specific." Stannis scoffed, then sighed. "He said you died, killed by one of the dragon bitch's swordsmen. But Lady Melisandre brought you back to life." He shrugged. "That's the most of it. There's more you're not saying. I'm not the same man. Seems I left pieces of me wherever death sent me. Forgot to pick them up on my sudden journey back to breathing." Stannis frowned, cocking his head. "Eschew. What pieces?" "Memories." "Several of them," Jon said, crossing his arms. While I now know that was my sister who threw the knife at Cersei, I wouldn't have recognized her in the streets. Oh well, perhaps you won't mind bringing me her head on a stick. Jon blinked. What? She has to pay for this disgrace. She said she'd find you. You'll go out and wait for her. Then you'll kill her and her fucking friend. You can't ask me to kill my own sister. Stannis' eyes narrowed, voice dropping. I killed my own brother for his treason, he whispered with a dark edge. If your king can choose duty over sentimentality, you can too. He stared back, just as hard. I can't see myself so heartless. Even in his shattered state, Jon could tell there were lines he could never cross. But Stannis wasn't done, smirking slightly. You've done it once before, with that wild and savage you loved. A memory lost to time. Jon couldn't remember this nameless woman, although a flash of cold and red poked through the abyss of his mind. Was what the Stagging said true? Was he that callous and ruthless? Questions for another time, for he couldn't doubt himself. When do you wish for me to begin the search? While Jon had no intention of killing Arya, he did intend on talking to her. If that placated the king for now, so be it. A massive crowd gathered in the throne room for the coronation of the new king. It was typical for an event like that, but many folks might have rather skipped it after Stannis' actions at the burning. Not many had seen things quite as vile. There'd been public executions before, sure, but not quick like that. Lords, somewhat innocent in their own right, heads separated. The previous hand of the queen. Throat cut ear to ear. The previous ruler, Queen Cersei, pregnant. Roasted down to bone on a stake. Quite indicative of the times. All previous kings or hands since the reign of the last Targaryen king, ending up either murdered or just escaping such. None knew what fate the latest Ep12 king would receive, given the existence of Daenerys Targaryen just across the bay. The entanglement with Jon Stark loomed over many of their minds. What all that meant, no one truly knew. Not many Southerners actually knew that much of Jon Stark, save his reputation and his existence. He had made an impression now, though. If Stannis wanted to start his rule with a boom, he had done that, at the very least. Not many would ever forget what he'd done. The executions, and also raining fire on the city. There had been countless explosions, and seemingly unrepairable damage done to the King's Landing. It wasn't publicly known that Stannis certainly caused more of the wildfire to go off. It just all seemed to go at once for those on the ground. Also, those who were affected directly by the explosions couldn't exactly snitch, as they didn't exist any longer. As such, the townsfolk, lords and ladies, were mostly quiet. No one dared be overly loud or outspoken, lest Stannis also tossed them in a fire. Fear from the outset, and he hadn't even worn the crown yet. If Stannis had intended to be able to bring everyone to heel instantly, he'd done that. Everyone rose as he entered the massive room through the big double doors. Stannis wore a dark black tunic with the sigil of his house emblazoned upon it in white thread. Red-orange framed the rearing stag, exactly what distinguished him from those embarrassments he called brothers. But they were dead, and he was here about to be crowned. All courtiers, from his own loyal forces to those obsequious survivors of regimes past that shamelessly sided with him upon his victory, bowed as he walked towards the dais where the Iron Throne rested, calling for him, forged for him as his destiny, those of his small council waiting around for him to arrive. The wound on his leg throbbed not as he walked up the steps, yet another auspicious omen. Resting atop a pillow, the hand of the king walked to it. Today, I proclaim Stannis of House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals, Rhynar, and First Men, Prince who was promised, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. Littlefinger gripped the newly forged crown, gold with red rubies, and the signature Staggin sigil. He turned to Stannis, who held the sternest but joyful countenance he could. Achieving one of your greatest dreams did that to him. Hardly seemed real. After his stout defeat at Blackwater, all hope seemed lost. But he made it back, and he fucking won. He had many people to thank for helping him. Or should thank. Not likely he ever would, directly, at least. He might have thanked Lady Melisandre had she not deserted him. He might have thanked Davos Seaworth had he not disobeyed him. He might have thanked Jon Stark had he not insulted him. No, he needed not to thank anyone. To those who forged their own destiny, humility was not something one needed. Stannis had created this victory, one not built on winning one single duel to the death, as Robert had. one not built on greed and opportunism that Renda tried to steal for himself. Crown lowered onto his head, Stannis allowed himself a smile as he then sat upon the Iron Throne, hands ghosting down the arm of the dragon-forged chair of swords. This was his, and he would never relinquish it. Long may he reign. Long may he reign.